Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the ninja of high school DxD, Naruto x Rias Gremory, DxD. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Dimensional Displacement. Pain. That was Naruto Uzumaki's first coherent thought as consciousness slowly returned to him. Not the sharp, immediate kind that came with a kunai to the flesh, but a deep, bone-weary ache that permeated every cell in his body. His eyelids felt impossibly heavy, as if weights had been attached to them during his unconsciousness. The last thing he remembered was Kagaya, the final desperate moments of their battle. Team 7 united one last time. Sasuke at his side, Sakura and Kakashi providing crucial support. The culmination of the fourth great ninja war. Had they won? Had they lost? Was he dead? Naruto forced his eyes open, wincing as bright light assaulted his retinas. The sky above was a perfect azure, unmarred by clouds, peaceful in a way that seemed almost obscene after the apocalyptic battlefield he'd just left. His fingers twitched, feeling soft grass beneath them instead of the rocky, chakra-scorched terrain of their final confrontation. Where? His voice emerged as a rasp, throat dry and tongue feeling swollen in his mouth. He pushed himself upright, muscles protesting with every movement. The world spun momentarily before settling into focus, revealing Surone. Dings that made no sense to his battle-weary mind. He sat in the middle of a park, an ordinary, peaceful park with benches, pathways, and cherry trees in full bloom. In the distance, buildings unlike a NY in the elemental nations pierced the sky, too tall, too smooth, made of materials he couldn't identify. This isn't the Pure Land, he muttered, referencing the afterlife his culture believed in. And definitely not the battlefield. Pushing to his feet, Naruto immediately noticed something wrong with his chakra. The boundless ocean of energy he'd grown accustomed to felt diminished, still substantial compared to most shinobi, but nothing like the near-limitless reserves he'd possessed after befriending all nine-tailed beasts. Kurama, he called internally, reaching for the familiar presence of the nine-tailed fox within him. Silence answered. Panic flashed through him. The fox had become more than just a source of power. He was a friend, a partner. His absence left a hole, low feeling in Naruto's chest that had nothing to do with chakra. Hey, Kurama, this isn't funny, he shouted within his mindscape, desperately searching the familiar sewer-like corridors that represented his inner world. Where the massive gate that once housed the fox should have been, Naruto found only a small, pulsing ember of familiar orange chakra, the barest fragment of Kurama's essence, Rely enough to acknowledge his presence before falling dormant again. Back in the physical world, Naruto clutched his stomach, the location of his seal. What happened to you? The sound of children laughing drew his attention. A small group ran past on a nearby path, wearing identical outfits, some kind of uniform. Their language reached his ears, and with a start, he realized he could understand them perfectly despite never having heard it before. That's not possible, he whispered, before another realization hit him. His clothing had changed. The tattered remains of his battle gear were gone, replaced by strange garments. Orange pants made of rough blue fabric, a white shirt, and a black jacket. His weapon pouches, scrolls, headband, all missing. A quick physical assessment revealed. His body was intact. No wounds from the battle remained, but something felt fundamentally different about his physical form. It was as if his very cellular structure had been altered to fit this new environment. Naruto closed his eyes, centering himself. Panic wouldn't help. Confusion wouldn't help. He needed information, and standing bewildered in the middle of a park wouldn't provide it. Furs. Rule of being stranded in unknown territory, he murmured, channeling Kakashi's teachings, observe before engaging. He began walking, following the path through the park toward what appeared to be the main part of this strange settlement. People passed him without a second glance, dressed in styles he'd never seen before. Vehicles, mechanical constructs that moved without animals pulling them, sped by on black stone roads. Signs with unfamiliar writing adorned buildings, though somehow he could comprehend their meaning. Kuo Town, he read from a prominent marker. Never heard of it. As he ventured deeper into the town, the strangeness only increased. Boxes showing moving images sat in store windows. People spoke into small handheld devices. Lights operated without flame. It was as if he'd stepped centuries into the future, or perhaps into another world entirely. That thought stopped him cold. Another world. The dimensional abilities of Keigaya's Rinne Sharingan. The space-time manipulation of Obito's Kamui. The sealing techniques they'd employed in that final battle. Had something gone catastrophically wrong? I've been transported somewhere else, he concluded aloud, drawing curious glances from passers-by. But where? When? How do I get back? His musing was interrupted by a sudden prickling sensation at the back of his neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched by someone with ill intent. Years of shinobi training kicked in instinctively. Without visibly changing his demeanor, Naruto expanded his sensory awareness, a skill he'd honed during the war. 3 presences, non-human, following at a distance. Their chakra, no, not chakra exactly, but something similar, felt dark, tainted, almost corrupt. Nothing like the clean malevolence of Kurama's original energy or the alien power of Keigaya. This was something else entirely. Naruto continued walking, deliberately projecting an aura of oblivious vulnerability while plotting his response. His chakra reserves might be diminished, but he was far from defenseless. Whatever these entities were, they clearly didn't know who they were stalking. He turned down a narrow alley, away from civilians, providing the perfect opportunity for his pursuers. As expected, they took the bait. The sound of wings, actual wings, fluttering through the air confirmed these weren't ordinary adversaries. My, what do we have here? A feminine voice called from above. A lost little boy wandering where he shouldn't. Naruto turned calmly to face his stalkers. 3 figures descended from the sky, landing at the alley's entrance. They appeared mostly human, except for the black feathered wings extending from their backs. 2 women and 1 man, all dressed in bizarre outfits that seemed impractically revealing for combat. I was about to ask you the same thing, Naruto replied evenly. Most people don't have wings where I come from, or follow strangers into alleys. The apparent leader, a woman with long black hair and violet eyes, laughed. The sound lacking any genuine mirth. How amusing. It speaks as if it has a right to question us. She formed a spear of glowing pink light in her hand. I don't know what kind of sacred gear you possess, boy. But that energy signature of yours is too unusual to ignore. Sacred gear, energy signature. Naruto filed the unfamiliar terms away for later consideration. I don't know what you're talking about, he said truthfully, but I'm not looking for trouble. Walk away now, and we can pretend this meeting never happened. All 3 beings laughed in unison, the sound grating against Naruto's nerves. A human, giving us orders. The male sneered, forming his own light spear. You've either got tremendous power or tremendous stupidity. Let's find out which. The spear hurtled toward Naruto with lethal speed that would have been impressive against an ordinary target. To a veteran of the 4th grade ninja war, it might as well have been moving through molasses. Naruto sidestepped casually, the weapon embedding itself in the concrete wall behind him. I warned you, he said, his voice dropping to a lower register. Last chance. The winged beings faltered momentarily, surprised by his speed, but quickly recovered their arrogance. Lucky dodge, the second female said, forming twin light daggers. But you can't evade all 3 of us. They attacked simultaneously, a coordinated assault from different angles. For normal humans, it would have been certain death. For Naruto, it was barely a warm-up exercise. He moved with fluid precision, dodging between light weapons with minimal movement. When the male attacker lunged in close, Naruto caught his wrist, using the momentum to fling him into the female with daggers. Both crashed into a dumpster with a satisfying clang of metal and groans of pain. The leader hung back, reassessing. What are you? She demanded, genuine confusion replacing her earlier condescension. That's not the movement of a sacred gear user. Naruto didn't answer immediately. Instead, he formed a familiar hand sign, testing if his techniques still worked in this strange place. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. With a puff of smoke, 3 perfect copies of himself appeared, each wearing the same determined expression. The winged woman's eyes widened in shock. That's not a sacred gear ability, she whispered. What magic is this? Not magic, Naruto replied, ninjutsu. He wasn't entirely sure if that clarification meant anything in this world, but it felt important to establish. His clones moved with perfect synchronization, flanking the leader before she could retreat. One grabbed her wings, another secured her arms, while the third knocked away her light spear. The original Naruto approached slowly. Now, you're going to answer some questions, he said calmly. Starting with, what are you, and where am I? The woman struggled against the clone's grip. Release me, filthy human. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I am Calawarner of the Gremory. The name meant nothing to Naruto, but the organization might be significant. Before he could press further, a new energy signature, too, actually, appeared at the alley's entrance. These felt different from his attackers, richer, deeper, but with a darkness that was somehow more natural, less corrupting. My, what an interesting scene we've stumbled upon. A feminine voice observed, fallen angels accosting a student on our territory. How bold. Naruto maintained his hold on Calawarner but shifted to keep the newcomers in view. Two young women stood watching the confrontation with expressions of mild interest. One had long crimson hair that seemed to glow with an inner light, while the other's black hair was tied in a long ponytail. Both wore the same uniform he'd seen on the children in the park, though they appeared to be older teenagers. The fallen angels, as they'd been called, visibly tensed at the newcomers' arrival. Gremory, Calawarner spat. This doesn't concern your kind. We detected an anomaly and were investigating. An anomaly on my territory, the redhead corrected smoothly, which makes it very much my concern. Her gaze shifted to Naruto and his clones, a flicker of surprise crossing her features before returning to cool composure. And it seems your anomaly has the situation well in hand without our intervention. Naruto studied the newcomers carefully. They weren't human either. Their energy felt similar to his captives but fundamentally different in nature. Neither group seemed particularly trustworthy. But at least these two hadn't immediately attacked him. You know what they are, Naruto stated, addressing the redhead. And what this place is. The girl smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. Indeed, and I'm most curious about what you are, considering you've subdued 3 fallen angels with apparent ease. She gestured around them. Perhaps we could discuss this somewhere more private. This alley isn't the best venue for such a conversation. Naruto weighed his options. Release the fallen angels and go with these new potential threats. Keep his captives and refuse the offer. Neither choice appealed, but information was his most pressing need. Akeno, the redhead addressed her companion, perhaps you could ensure our fallen friends find their way out of town. I believe they've overstayed their welcome. The black-haired girl, Akeno, smiled in a way that made even Naruto uncomfortable. With pleasure, Rias. Electricity crackled subtly around her fingers. I do so enjoy reminding them of boundaries. The fallen angels blanched at the implied threat, even the male and female who had recovered from their collision with the dumpster. Naruto made his decision. I'll release them, on the condition they leave peacefully. He looked directly at Calawarner. And that they spread the word, I'm not interested in being hunted. The fallen angel nodded stiffly. Pride warring with self-preservation. Naruto's clones released her and then dissipated in small clouds of smoke. The 3 winged beings retreated several steps, eyeing Akeno warily. This isn't finished, Calawarner warned, though her bravado sounded hollow. The Gremory will want to know about you. They're welcome to ask politely next time, Naruto replied evenly. I don't respond well to ambushes. With final glares and wounded dignity, the fallen angels spread their wings and launched skyward, quickly disappearing over the rooftops. Alone with the 2 newcomers, Naruto maintained a ready stance. Your turn. Who are you, and what do you want? The redhead performed a small, elegant curtsy. Rias Gremory, heiress of House Gremory. This is Akeno Himehime, my queen. We're devils, and this town falls under my protection. She said this as casually as someone might introduce themselves as a shopkeeper or teacher. Devils, Naruto repeated flatly. Like, from hell, with pitchforks and horns. Akeno giggled, covering her mouth demurely. My, what an outdated image. Though I could acquire a pitchfork if that would make you more comfortable, mysterious coon. Despite this situation, Naruto found his lips quirking slightly. Naruto, he offered. Naruto Uzumaki. A pleasure, Naruto-kun, Rias responded. Now, about my invitation to continue this conversation elsewhere. Why should I trust you more than them? He asked bluntly. Because we didn't attack you unprovoked. Rias suggested with a raised eyebrow. Because I'm offering information freely. Cause you're clearly new here and need allies. She shrugged elegantly. Take your pick. Naruto had to admit she had points. And unlike the fallen angels, her energy signature didn't set off his internal warning systems quite as severely. Lead the way, he finally agreed, but know that those clones were just a fraction of what I can do if this turns out to be another ambush. Rias nodded respectfully. Duly noted. Please, follow us. They led him through side streets to avoid curious onlookers, eventually arriving at what appeared to be a school, the source of the uniforms he'd been seeing. The building was deserted at this hour, the sun beginning to set as they made their way to an old-looking structure on the grounds. The Occult Research Club, Rias explained as she unlocked the door. Our cover for devil activities at Kuo Academy. The interior was unexpected, luxuriously furnished with antique furniture, candlelit despite the modern building, with arcane symbols subtly incorporated into the decor. 2 more people awaited inside, a petite girl with white hair who sat emotionlessly eating sweets, and a handsome blonde boy who rose politely at their entrance. President, you found, the boy began. Before noticing Naruto, his hand instinctively moved toward his hip, where Naruto suspected a weapon would normally be. At ease, Kiba, Rias instructed. Our guest isn't hostile, yet. She gestured to a couch. Please, Naruto-kun, make yourself comfortable. Kaneko, Kiba, this is Naruto Uzumaki. Well, that's what we're about to find out. Naruto remained standing, taking in the room and its occupants. The white-haired girl, Kaneko, apparently, had stopped eating and was staring at him with unusual intensity, her nose twitching slightly. You smell like a fox, she stated flatly. Setting down her plate, Naruto tensed. What do you know about that? Rias looked between them with interest. Kaneko has enhanced senses. If she says you smell like a fox, it's not an insult, it's a literal observation. She settled gracefully into a high-backed chair. Which brings us to the central question. What exactly are you, Naruto Uzumaki? You're not a devil, angel, or fallen. You're not entirely human either, based on what I sensed. Those copies you created weren't illusions but physical duplicates, which isn't a common ability in any race I'm familiar with. Naruto weighed his options. These people, devils, supposedly, were his best lead for understanding this world and potentially finding a way home. Limited honesty seemed the wisest approach. I'm a shinobi, a ninja, from a place called the Elemental Nations, he began, watching their reactions carefully. I was in the middle of a battle when something happened. Some kind of dimensional technique, I think. I woke up in your park with no idea how I got here or where here even is. Akeno brought tea while he spoke, setting a cup before him that he politely ignored. Dimensional travel, Rias mused. That's extremely rare and typically requires significant power. The battle I was in, Naruto continued carefully, was against an entity with godlike powers. Space-time manipulation was among her abilities. This caused visible reactions from everyone in the room. Kiba's eyes widened, Kaneko stopped chewing her sweet, and Akeno paused in pouring tea. Rias leaned forward, suddenly much more interested. Godlike is a term we don't use lightly here, she said. Our world has actual gods from various pantheons. Are you suggesting your opponent was of that caliber? Naruto nodded grimly. Kagaya Otsutsuki, the progenitor of all chakra in our world. She could create and destroy dimensions at will, manipulate gravity, read minds, and nearly enslaved humanity. And you fought this being? Kiba asked, skepticism evident. Not alone, Naruto clarified. With my team. My friends. His voice caught slightly on the word, the reality of his situation hitting him anew. I don't know if we won. I don't know if they're alive. I don't even know if I can get back. A moment of silence followed this admission. The vulnerability in his voice seemed to affect even Kaneko, whose stoic expression softened fractionally. This chakra you mentioned, Rias said after a respectful pause, is that your source of power? The energy we sensed. Naruto nodded, deciding to demonstrate. He held out his hand, focusing his diminished reserves to form a swirling blue sphere. Rasengan, he said softly, the familiar technique taking shape, though smaller than his usual version. This is pure chakra manipulation, a combination of physical and spiritual energy. The devils watched with unconcealed fascination as the spiraling sphere rotated in his palm before he allowed it to dissipate. Fascinating, Rias breathed. It's similar to demonic power in some ways, but fundamentally different in structure. More harmonious with natural energy, I'd say. You mentioned Fox, Naruto said, turning to Kaneko. You're right, I was, the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox, Kurama. A being of immense chakra in my world. We became partners, but when I arrived here, most of his power and presence was gone. His hand unconsciously moved to his stomach. Only a fragment remains. Kaneko's eyes narrowed slightly. Yukai, she murmured. Not exactly, Naruto corrected. Biju, tailed beasts, living chakra constructs created from the 10 tails, who in turn was a fusion of Kagaya and the God Tree. He paused, realizing how bizarre this must sound to them. It's complicated. Our world has fox yukai as well, Rias explained. Spiritual fox entities with multiple tails denoting their power. Kaneko likely senses similarity between their energy and your residual fox chakra. This was the first truly useful information Naruto had received, a potential connection between the worlds. Are there 9-tailed foxes here too? Very rarely, Akeno answered. The Kyuubi no Kitsune is considered one of the most powerful yukai. The leader of the Kyoto faction, Yusaka, is one such being. Naruto's eyes widened. Kyuubi, the same title. That can't be coincidence. Hope flickered in his chest. If there are parallels between our worlds, maybe there's a way back. Perhaps, Rias allowed, though dimensional travel isn't my specialty. However, she tapped her chin thoughtfully, my brother might know more. He's one of the 4 great Satans that rule the underworld. Satan, Naruto repeated flatly. As in, the devil. The actual devil. Akeno giggled again. One of 4, actually. Satan is a title in our world. Not a specific entity. Sears X Lucifer, Rias's brother, holds the Lucifer title. Naruto dropped unceremoniously onto the couch, suddenly feeling the weight of his situation. Fallen angels, devils, Satan, yukai. He rubbed his temples. And I thought my world was complicated. Rias smiled sympathetically. It's a lot to take in, I know. But you're fortunate. You could have appeared somewhere much less accommodating to supernatural entities. Huo Town has a significant non-human population, hidden among ordinary society. Which brings us to a practical matter, Kiba spoke up. Where will Uzumaki-san stay while figuring this out? And what cover story will explain his presence? It was a good question. Naruto had been so focused on understanding his situation that practical concerns hadn't yet registered. I have an idea, Rias said, eyes lighting with sudden inspiration. Huo Academy recently became co-ed, and we're still accepting transfer students. Naruto could enroll, providing both lodging in the dormitories and a natural reason to interact with us regularly. School, Naruto balked. I'm not exactly a conventional student, Rias finished for him. Few of us are, but it provides excellent cover and resources while we investigate your situation. She smiled reassuringly. Don't worry, I can handle the paperwork and necessary documentation. Benefits of devil influence. And in exchange, Naruto asked suspiciously. People don't offer help without wanting something in return. Especially not devils. The term still felt strange on his tongue. Rias's expression became more serious. Honesty. I appreciate that. She leaned forward. In exchange, I'd like to learn more about your abilities. Your world. This chakra. Knowledge is valuable, especially regarding potential dimensional threats like this Kagaya you mentioned. It was a reasonable request, and far less demanding than Naruto had feared. I can agree to that. But I have conditions too. Name them. Complete transparency, Naruto stated firmly. No hidden agendas. If you discover anything about my situation or a way home, you tell me immediately. I'll share knowledge, but I won't be anyone's pawn or research subject. Rias nodded. Agreed. Second, Naruto continued, I maintain my autonomy. I'll attend your school as cover, but I won't pledge allegiance to devils or anyone else. I'm neutral in whatever supernatural conflicts exist here. This caused a slight frown. Neutrality can be difficult to maintain in our world, Naruto-kun. Varyu's factions may pursue you regardless of your preferences. The fallen angels already demonstrated that. I handled them well enough, Naruto pointed out. Those three were low-ranking, Akeno interjected. There are far more powerful beings in every faction. Even so, Naruto insisted. I need to maintain independence while I figure this out. After a moment's consideration, Rias nodded again. Very well, autonomy granted, though I offer you the protection of House Gremory while in Kuo. It would be irresponsible to leave you completely vulnerable in an unfamiliar world. The tension in Naruto's shoulders eased slightly. Thank you. Kaneko, who had been silently observing, suddenly spoke. You're strong. It wasn't a question, but sad. Her direct assessment caught Naruto off guard. I left everyone behind, he admitted quietly. People who depend on me. People I promised to protect. The small girl nodded as if this confirmed something, then returned to her sweets without further comment. It's settled then, Rias declared, rising from her chair. Welcome to Kuo Academy, Naruto Uzumaki. I'll prepare your documentation tonight and show you to temporary accommodations until the dormitory paperwork is processed. There's one more thing, Naruto said, remembering an important detail. Those fallen angels mentioned something called a sacred gear. They thought I had one. What is that? The devils exchanged glances. Sacred gears are divine artifacts created by the biblical god, Rias explained. Powerful tools embedded in humans that manifest as unique abilities. They likely sensed your unusual energy and assumed you were a powerful sacred gear user. This god is real too? Naruto asked, increasingly bewildered. Was real, Akeno corrected. He died during the Great War between angels, fallen angels, and devils. But his systems remain in place, including sacred gears. Naruto absorbed this information silently. A world with actual gods, angels, and devils, all apparently confirming various religious texts from his world. The parallels were too specific to be coincidence. Somehow, the dimensions were connected. I have much to learn, he finally said. And we'll help you, Rias assured him. For now, let's get you settled. Tomorrow will be your first day of school, try to blend in as much as possible. Kiba approached, offering his hand. I can show you around the campus before classes tomorrow if you'd like. It might help with the adjustment. Naruto accepted the handshake, noting the swordsman's calluses, familiar marks of a fellow warrior. Thanks, I'd appreciate that. As they prepared to leave the clubhouse, Naruto paused, turning back to Kaneko who continued to watch him with those penetrating eyes. Is there something else? He asked gently. She hesitated, an unusual vulnerability crossing her typically stoic features. The fox. Is it dangerous? Understanding dawned. Her concern wasn't casual, it was personal. Naruto approached slowly, crouching to meet her eye level. Kurama was once consumed by hatred, he said honestly. He caused tremendous destruction, but he changed. We became friends, partners. The fragment that remains holds no malice. Something like relief flickered in her eyes before she looked away. Good. The interaction puzzled him, but Naruto filed it away as another mystery to solve in this strange new world. For now, he would follow Rias's lead, learn everything he could about this reality, and search for a way home, or at least confirmation that his friends had succeeded where he had been displaced. Let's go, Rias called from the doorway, her crimson hair catching the last rays of sunset. There's much to prepare before tomorrow. Naruto followed, stepping out into a world of devils, angels, and gods, a world where his identity as a shinobi made him neither one thing nor another. A stranger in a land more bizarre than any he had encountered. Yet as he walked beside his new acquaintances, he wouldn't call them allies just yet, Naruto felt a familiar determination rising within him. He had faced impossible odds before, had overcome pain, loneliness, and despair, had anged the hearts of enemies and united warring nations. This was just another challenge on his ninja way, and Naruto Uzumaki never gave up. Rias Gremory was an excellent guide, Naruto had to admit. Despite his suspicion of devils in general, a prejudice he was trying to overcome, given the apparent complexity of this world, he found her explanations clear and her manner surprisingly genuine. For someone who had introduced herself as nobility of hell. The temporary accommodations she had arranged turned out to be a modest apartment not far from the academy grounds. It was sparsely furnished but functional, with basic necessities provided. It's not much, she apologized as they entered, but it will serve until your dormitory assignment is processed. Naruto shook his head. It's fine. I've slept in tree hollows during missions. This is luxury by comparison. The comment seemed to surprise her. Your world sounds rather harsh. It can be, he acknowledged. We're raised as so. Elders from childhood in the hidden villages. Peace was always fragile until, he trailed off, not wanting to delve into the complexities of his world's recent history. Rias seemed to sense his reluctance and didn't press. There are clothes in the bedroom that should fit you. The school uniform is required during class hours, I'm afraid. Naruto grimaced. Is it as uncomfortable as it looks? That earned a genuine laugh. Perhaps worse, but it's part of the cover. She moved to the small kitchen area, opening cabinets. There's food and basic supplies here. I've also left a phone. Do you have similar technology in your world? Nothing like what I've seen here, Naruto admitted. Our communications are much more primitive. Are different, at least. She placed a small rectangular device on the counter. I've programmed my number in Akanos. If you encounter any problems, please call immediately. Naruto picked up the phone cautiously. How does it work? The next 15 minutes were spent in an impromptu technology lesson that left Naruto feeling both impressed and slightly overwhelmed. The casual way this world integrated advanced technology with supernatural elements was disconcerting. One last thing, Rias said, reaching into her school bag. Your documentation. She handed over several official-looking papers. Student ID, residence permit, basic background information. Memorize it before tomorrow. As far as anyone knows, you're a transfer student from a small private academy that recently closed. Naruto scanned the documents, noting the thoroughness. These look completely legitimate. They are legitimate, Rias corrected. Devils have considerable influence in human society. These will pass any inspection. Handy skill, Naruto murmured, setting the papers aside. Thank you for all this. I know you have your own motives, but the help is still appreciated. Rias studied him for a moment. You're not what I expected, she finally said. What did you expect? Most beings of significant power have corresponding arrogance, she explained. Especially those used to combat. You're powerful. That much was evident from your confrontation with DxD fallen angels, but you're not flaunting it. Naruto shrugged. Power without compassion is meaningless. I learned that lesson the hard way. An unusual philosophy, she noted with interest. I ally for someone who describes himself as a soldier. I'm more than just a soldier, Naruto replied. At least, I try to be. Something in his tone seemed to resonate with her. We have that in common, then, she said softly. Well, I should let you rest. Tomorrow will be challenging enough without exhaustion. She moved toward the door but paused with her hand on the knob. Naruto-kun, whatever brought you to our world, I believe it happened for a reason. Perhaps there's purpose in this displacement. The sentiment was clearly meant to be comforting, but it struck a nerve. With all due respect, Gremory-san, I had purpose in my world. People who needed me, responsibilities. His voice remained even, but an edge had crept in. If there's a reason for this, it had better be a damn good one. Rather than taking offense, Rias nodded soberly. Fair enough. Good night, Naruto-kun. Hiba will meet you at the front gates at 7:30. After she departed, Naruto explored the apartment for Auli, a habit ingrained by years of shinobi training. Finding no immediate concerns, he settled on the small balcony, assuming a meditative position to assess his chakra situation more carefully. DxD diminishment was significant but not catastrophic. His reserves were perhaps 30% of what they had been during the war, though still considerable by ordinary shinobi standards. The nature transformate, ion abilities remained intact. He could feel his wind affinity as strongly as ever, and the other elemental chakras gifted by the Six Paths Sage Mode were present, if muted. Most concerning was Kurama's condition. The fox's chakra was reduced to a mere ember, present but dormant. Naruto couldn't establish the usual communication, though he sensed the fragment recognized him when he reached for it. Just hang in there, partner. he whispered to the quiet presence. We'll figure this out. Opening his eyes, Naruto gazed at the unfamiliar stars above this strange world. They formed different patterns than the constellations he knew, further confirming just how far from home he truly was. Everyone, I hope you're all okay, he said to the night sky. Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi-sensei, I hope you finished what we started. His thoughts turned to Hinata, whose confession during Pain's attack had never been properly addressed in the chaos that followed. To Gaara, who had finally found peace and purpose as Kazekage. To Tsunade, who had believed in him as the future Hokage. To all the friends and comrades who had fought alongside him. I'll find my way back, he promised the distant stars. Believe it. Morning arrived with the unfamiliar sound of an alarm from the phone Rias had provided. Naruto, who had slept lightly as shinobi were trained to do, was already awake and calm. Letting a basic training regimen to test his physical capabilities in this world. The results were mixed. His strength, speed, and reflexes remained superhuman by this world's standards, but diminished from his peak during the war. Like his chakra, his physical abilities seemed to have been scaled down during the dimensional transfer, perhaps his body adapting to the different metaphysical laws of this reality. After a quick shower, Naruto reluctantly donned the school uniform Rias had provided. The jacket was restrictive across the shoulders, the tie felt like a potential strangulation hazard. And the entire ensemble limited mobility in ways that made the shinobi in him deeply uncomfortable. How does anyone fight in this? He muttered, trying unsuccessfully to adjust the collar for better neck rotation. He ate a hasty breakfast from the supplies provided, consulted a map of the area Rias had left, and set out for Kuo Academy with his fabricated documentation secured in the school bag that had been provided. The morning was pleasantly warm, cherry blossoms drifting on the breeze as Naruto made his way through streets increasingly populated with students in identical uniforms. Many gave him curious glances, a new face in what was clearly a close-knit community. Kuo Academy itself was impressive, a sprawling campus of elegant European-style buildings surrounded by manicured grounds. The main gate was imposing, and just beyond it, as promised, waited Kiba Yuto. Good morning, Uzumaki-san, the blonde boy greeted politely. I trust you rested well. Well enough, Naruto replied, matching the formality while assessing the other boy more carefully in daylight. Kiba carried himself with the balanced poise of a swordsman, though he concealed it well beneath his perfect student demeanor. His smile was practiced, pleasant but revealing nothing. A mask, Naruto realized, not unlike the ones he had worn himself in younger days. Please, call me Naruto, he offered, deliberately relaxing his posture. The formality feels strange, Naruto-kun, then, Kiba agreed with a more genuine smile. Shall we begin the tour? We have about 40 minutes before first bell. As they walked the grounds, Kiba provided a comprehensive overview of the academy, its history originally an all-girls school, recently made co-ed facilities surprisingly extensive and in spoken Soshi. Hierarchies. Apparently Kiba himself was considered something of an idol among the female students, a fact he mentioned with embarrassed resignation. The occult research club room you saw yesterday is our primary base, he explained as they passed the old building. President Rias and Akano-san are third years. Kaneko-chan and I are second years. You've been registered as a second year as well, in my class for convenience. What's the cover story for the club? Naruto asked. Surely people notice you're not actually researching the occult. Kiba chuckled. Actually, we do research itemate occult topics occasionally. It provides useful information and maintains our cover. Mostly we're known as an exclusive club of the school's most popular students, which creates natural distance. People rarely question what the elite do in their private time. Convenient, Naruto observed. Indeed. Ah, here's the administrative building. We should check in and get your class schedule before the tour continues. The process was surprisingly simple. Naruto presented his documentation, received a printed schedule, and was officially welcomed to Kuo Academy with minimal questioning. There the paperwork Rias had provided was flawless, or there was subtle devil influence at work, perhaps both. As they exited the administrative building, a commotion near the main path caught Naruto's attention. A crowd of female students had gathered, excitedly watching the arrival of two figures Naruto recognized immediately, Rias and Akino, walking side by side with perfect poise. The two great ladies, Kiba explained. Noting Naruto's interest, Rias Bushu and Akino-san are the most admired students in the academy. Their arrival always causes a stir. Naruto could see why. Both carried themselves with a natural confidence that commanded attention. Rias's crimson hair stood out like a flame among the darker-haired students, while Akino's traditional beauty and graceful movement drew appreciative gazes from boys and girls alike. They noticed Naruto and Kiba watching, and Rias offered a subtle nod of acknowledgement without breaking her public persona. Akino went slightly further, giving a small wave and a wink that caused nearby students to wonder who the new boy was to receive such attention. And now you'll be the subject of speculation, Kiba noted with amusement. Being acknowledged by one of the great ladies on your first day is unusual. Great, Naruto muttered, so much for blending in. Kiba laughed. It can't be helped. Come, we should continue the tour before classes begin. The remaining facilities were impressive by any standard: a massive gymnasium, multiple sports fields, science laboratories, and a library that would have made Sakura envious. Throughout it all, Naruto noticed subtle signs of devil influence: small wards etched into inconspicuous corners, strategic placement of what appeared to be normal decorative elements that actually formed protective arrays, and carefully positioned blind spots in the school's security camera coverage. Your faction has thoroughly secured this territory, Naruto observed quietly as they walked between buildings. Kiba's eyebrows rose slightly. You noticed. Most supernatural beings wouldn't catch the subtleties without actively searching. Shinobi are trained to observe, Naruto replied simply. Especially in unfamiliar territory. I see. Kiba seemed to reassess him mentally. The defensive measures are primarily to detect intrusions rather than prevent them. An early warning system of sorts. This is Bushu's territory, but we prefer to handle threats discreetly rather than create barriers that might attract attention. The tour concluded at Naruto's assigned classroom just as students began filing in for the day's lessons. Kiba introduced him to the teacher, a middle-aged woman who welcomed him warmly but with a slightly glazed expression that suggested mild magical influence. Class, she announced as students settled into their seats, we have a new transfer student joining us today. Please welcome Uzumaki Naruto-kun. All eyes turned to him with varying degrees of interest. Naruto, who had faced down legendary shinobi, tailed beasts, and godlike entities, found himself unexpectedly uncomfortable under the scrutiny of ordinary teenagers. Hello, he began awkwardly. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Look forward to studying with you all. He bowed slightly, remembering the local custom Kiba had demonstrated earlier. A wave of whispers immediately swept through the room. He's cute. Look at those marks on his cheeks. Are those tattoos? Did you see how Kiba-kun walked in with him? Are they friends already? Those blue eyes. Is he foreign? The teacher directed him to an empty seat near the window. 2 rows behind Kiba. As Naruto moved through the aisle, he passed a small white-haired figure he recognized. Kaneko was apparently also in this class, though Kiba hadn't mentioned it. She gave him the barest nod of acknowledgement, then returned to staring impassively out the window. The school day that followed was an exercise in patience and cultural adaptation. The subjects themselves weren't particularly challenging. Naruto had received basic education in the academy and through his training with Jiraiya, but the teaching methods and social dynamics were entirely foreign. During breaks between classes, he was approached by curious students with endless questions about his background, which he navigated carefully using the cover story Rias had provided. A small, nervous-looking boy with glasses seemed particularly interested in him after noticing Kiba's friendly demeanor toward the newcomer. You must be special to be immediately accepted by Kiba-senpai. The boy observed during lunch period. I'm Motohama, by the way. This is Matsuda. He indicated a boy with a shaved head who was openly ogling a group of girls across the courtyard. We're not really friends yet, Naruto clarified. He was just assigned to show me around. Matsuda tore his gaze away from the girls long enough to join the conversation. Still, the pretty boys usually stick together. You'll probably be invited to join that fancy occult research club before the week is out. Naruto chose his response carefully. I'm not really interested in clubs. I'm just trying to get settled in. Smart. Motohama nodded sagely. Keep a low profile. Build your harem slowly. Naruto nearly choked on his drink. My what? Your harem, Matsuda said as if it were obvious. Good. Looking foreign transfer student always gets the girls in manga. It's the natural order of things. I'm not interested in a harem, Naruto responded, finding the term bizarre coming from ordinary students. Did everyone in this world casually discuss such things? Both boys looked at him as if he'd grown a second head. Not interested in beautiful women? Matsuda asked suspiciously. Are you one of those BL protagonists instead? What? No, Naruto protested, feeling the conversation spiraling beyond his control. I just meant I'm focused on other things right now. Like what could be more important than women? Motohama demanded incredulously. Naruto was saved from further explanation by the timely arrival of Kaneko, who appeared silently beside their table. Uzumaki, she said flatly. President wants to see you after school. Club room. Both Matsuda and Motohama gaped at this direct address from one of the school's beloved mascots. Naruto seized the opportunity to extract himself from the uncomfortable conversation. Thanks, Chuju-san, I'll be there. He gathered his half-eaten lunch. Sorry, guys, I need to prepare for afternoon classes. He walked away to sounds of Matsuda and Motohama expressing shock and jealousy over his apparent connection to the school mascot. The rest of the day passed in a blur of unfamiliar subjects and social navigation. By the time the final bell rang, Naruto had a newfound appreciation for the straightforward dangers of combat compared to the complex minefield of high school social dynamics. True to his word, he made his way to the occult research club room after classes ended. Kiba fell into step beside him as he crossed the campus. How was your first day? The devil swordsman inquired politely. Educational, Naruto replied dryly. Though not necessarily about the subjects being taught. Kiba chuckled. The social dynamics of human teenagers can be more complex than supernatural politics sometimes. I've noticed. Is there a reason Rias wants to see me? I believe she has information about your situation, Kiba replied, becoming more serious. She was communicating with her brother most of last night. This piqued Naruto's interest. The Satan you mentioned, Lucifer. Sears Lucifer. Yes, if anyone would know about dimensional anomalies, it would be him. When they arrived at the club building, they found not only the usual members but also a new face. A bespectacled young woman with short black hair and a stern expression, wearing a different style of the school uniform. Ah, Naruto-kun, welcome. Rias greeted from behind her desk. This is Sona Citri, student council president and heir to the Citri family, another of the 72 pillars of the underworld. The serious-looking girl assessed Naruto carefully. So this is your dimensional traveler. Interesting. He doesn't look like much. Appearances can be deceiving, Naruto replied evenly. As I'm sure a devil understands. A ghost of a smile crossed Sona's features. Indeed, she turned to Rias. You're correct. His energy signature is unlike anything in our records. Not human, devil, angel, fallen, or yokai. You've been analyzing me, Naruto asked, a edge entering his voice. Passively, Rias assured him. Standard procedure for unknown entities in our territory. Sona's family specializes in information and analysis magic. Naruto reminded himself that suspicion was reasonable from their perspective. An unknown being with unusual powers appearing suddenly in their territory warranted investigation. What did your brother say? He asked, cutting to the heart of the matter. Rias gestured for him to sit. Sears was extremely interested in your case. Dimensional travelers are exceedingly rare, and usually arrive through deliberate summoning or catastrophic magical accidents. Spontaneous dimensional displacement on this scale is virtually unprecedented. That doesn't sound encouraging for getting home, Naruto observed grimly. Not necessarily, Rias countered. He's having ancient archives searched for similar cases. The devil civilization is over 10,000 years old. If there are precedents, they'll be found. In the meantime, Sona interjected, we need to establish clear parameters for your presence here. Rias has granted you autonomy, which I respect but consider potentially problematic. Kuo Town is under joint Gremory Citri protection. An unaffiliated powerful entity represents a variable we cannot fully account for. Naruto met her gaze directly. I understand your concern, but I'm not interested in your supernatural politics. I just want to find a way home, or at least confirm what happened to my friends. Noble, but naive, Sona replied bluntly. Whether you're interested or not, your mere presence affects the balance. The fallen angels have already taken notice. Others will follow. Sona, Rias began with slight reproach. She's right, Naruto interrupted. I understand the position my presence puts you in. He thought for a moment. How about this? I'll agree to coordinate with both of you regarding any supernatural encounters. Complete transparency. In exchange, you continue helping me investigate a way home and grant me the autonomy to act independently if necessary. The two devil heiresses exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that only longtime associates can manage. Acceptable, Sona finally said. With one addition. You will not engage any supernatural faction without consulting one of us first, unless in immediate self-defense. Define. Immediate, Naruto countered, the negotiator in him recognizing potential restrictions. Physical attack against yourself or innocent bystanders, Sona clarified. Not perceived threats or suspicions. Naruto nodded. I can work with that. Excellent. Rias smiled, seemingly relieved at the resolution. Now, there's one more matter to discuss. The trace of fox energy within you. A knock at the door interrupted her. Akeno, who had been silently serving tea throughout the conversation, moved to answer it. Era, an unexpected visitor, she said, opening the door. Reveal a tall man with black hair and golden bangs, dressed in what appeared to be traditional Japanese attire under a light overcoat. The atmosphere in the room instantly changed. Hiba shifted subtly into a more combat-ready stance. Kaneko set down her sweets. Rias and Sona both straightened in their seats. Governor Azazel, Rias greeted, her tone carefully neutral. This is an unexpected honor. I don't recall scheduling a meeting. The man smiled disarmingly as he entered, though his eyes, sharp and ancient, immediately fixed on Naruto. Forgive the intrusion, Rias-chan, Sona-chan. I happened to be in the neighborhood and thought I'd introduce myself to your new friend. He extended a hand toward Naruto. Azazel, governor of the Gremory, the Fallen Angel organization. A pleasure to meet you, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto rose slowly, assessing the newcomer. Unlike the fallen angels from the alley, this being's power was not merely dark or tainted, it was vast and ancient, carefully controlled but unmistakably formidable. This was no low-ranking soldier but a general, a leader. Your subordinates weren't nearly as polite with their introduction, Naruto remarked, accepting the handshake cautiously. Azazel winced theatrically. Ah, yes, I heard about that unfortunate encounter. Please accept my apologies for their behavior. Unauthorized operations by overzealous underlings are an eternal headache for leadership. Wouldn't you agree, Rias-chan? Why are you really here, Azazel? Sona asked directly. This territory is under treaty protection. Fallen Angel leadership doesn't make casual visits. The Fallen Angel governor spread his hands innocently. Genuine curiosity. A being from another dimension with energy unlike anything in our records. How could a researcher like myself resist? He turned back to Naruto. That chakra of yours is fascinating. Neither holy nor demonic, yet powerful in its own unique way. And that fragment of the fox entity, most intriguing. Naruto tensed. How do you know about that? I make it my business to know things, Azazel replied casually. Especially about potentially world-altering anomalies. Don't worry. Unlike my subordinates, I have no interest in conflict. Quite the opposite, in fact. Governor Azazel is known for his research into sacred gears and unusual phenomena, Rias explained, though her tone remained cautious. He's also one of the advocates for peace between the three factions. Peace through knowledge, Azazel nodded. Speaking of which, I may have some information that would interest you, Naruto-kun. He reached into his coat, causing everyone to tense, but withdrew only a small, ancient-looking book. This text mentions dimensional travelers from a realm of chakra warriors, approximately 800 years ago. The revelation sent a jolt through Naruto. 800 years. People from my world have been here before. According to this account, yes, Azazel confirmed, setting the book on the table. 3 individuals with abilities similar to what you've demonstrated. They appeared during a period of significant supernatural conflict and eventually aligned with the Yukai factions, Sona finished. Having quickly skimmed the opened page. Specifically, the Fox clan of Kyoto. Precisely, Azazel nodded approvingly. They were described as ninjas, with the ability to transform, create duplicates, manipulate elements, and summon creatures. Sound familiar? Naruto's mind raced. Did they ever return home? Does it say how they arrived or how they might have left? Azazel's expression turned apologetic. Unfortunately, the account ends with them establishing permanent residence among the yokai. If they found a way back, it wasn't recorded here. Hope flared and dimmed in rapid succession. Evidence of previous travelers confirmed a connection between worlds but offered no immediate solution for return. May I? Naruto asked, reaching for the book. By all means, Azazel replied. Consider it a peace offering. My organization will respect your autonomy, provided you extend the same courtesy to us. Naruto accepted the book carefully. Thank you. Now then, Azazel continued breezily. I should take my leave before I cause any more diplomatic tension. But Naruto-kun, if you ever wish to discuss your unique abilities or situation further, I'd be delighted to compare notes. He produced a business card from thin air. I'm particularly interested in that Rasengan technique of yours. The spiraling energy manipulation is quite similar to certain theoretical models I've been developing. Naruto accepted the card warily, wondering how Azazel knew about his technique when he hadn't demonstrated it in public. You've been watching me, he stated flatly. Azazel's smile didn't waver. I observe many interesting things. It's a hobby. He turned to Rias and Sona with a respectful nod. Ladies, thank you for your forbearance. I look forward to the next official meeting. With that, he departed as suddenly as he had arrived, leaving a wake of tension and uncertainty behind him. Well, Rias finally said into the silence, that was unexpected. Azazel never does anything without multiple purposes, Sona noted, adjusting her glasses. The information was valuable, but what did he gain by delivering it personally? A first impression advantage, Naruto suggested. Thinking like a strategist, he portrayed himself as helpful and forthcoming, establishing a positive connection before anyone else could frame fallen angels negatively to me. Both devil heiresses looked at him with new appreciation. A sound assessment, Sona agreed. For someone new to our world, you grasp political maneuvering quickly. Naruto shrugged. I've dealt with village politics and wartime alliances. The players and powers are different, but the strategies are familiar. Rias reclaimed the conversation. The connection to Fox Yokai is significant. If previous travelers from your world established ties with Kyoto, that could be our best lead. Can we contact them? Naruto asked eagerly. It's complicated, Rias said carefully. Relations bet. Devils and Yokai are diplomatic but distant. We don't have direct channels to Yasaka, the current leader. I might. Akeno spoke up unexpectedly. Through my mother's side, I have distant connections to certain Shinto factions that maintain relations with Kyoto. Rias looked surprised. You've never mentioned this before, Akeno. A shadow crossed the black-haired girl's features. It's not a heritage I typically acknowledge. She glanced at Naruto. But for this purpose, I'm willing to explore it. Naruto recognized the cost of this offer. Though he didn't know the specifics, it was clear Akeno's background was a source of pain, something he understood all too well. I appreciate that, he said sincerely. But I don't want to force anyone to confront painful pasts on my behalf. Akeno's eyes widened slightly at his perceptiveness. It's not entirely selfless, she admitted. I'm curious about your situation as well. And perhaps, it's time I addressed certain aspects of my heritage. The conversation shifted to logistics. How to approach the Kyoto Yokai, what preparations would be needed, and how to maintain normal school appearances in the meantime. Throughout the discussion, Naruto found himself studying his new allies with growing interest. Despite their supernatural nature, their dynamics were remarkably familiar. Rias as the charismatic leader, Akeno as the supportive second-in-command. Hiba as the loyal protector, Kaneko as the quiet observer, and Sona as the intellectual rival ally. It reminded him, with a bittersweet pang, of the dynamics within the Konoha 11 and his various teams. As the meeting concluded and members began to disperse, Kaneko approached Naruto directly for the first time since their brief lunch interaction. The book, she said quietly. I can help translate the older passages. I know Fox Yokai dialect. Thanks, Kaneko-san, Naruto replied, surprised by the offer. That would be really helpful. She nodded once, then a DDED in an even lower voice. Fox energy isn't always bad. I'm learning that. Before he could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving Naruto with the distinct impression he'd been given a rare glimpse behind her stoic facade. Rias, who had observed the exchange, joined him by the window. Kaneko has complicated feelings about yokai, especially foxes, she explained cryptically. Your presence is challenging for her, but potentially healing too. There's a lot I still don't understand about this world, Naruto admitted. About all of you, and there's much about you we don't understand either. Rias replied with a gentle smile. We're all navigating uncertainty together. She glanced at the setting sun visible through the window. How are you adjusting to the dormitory? Is everything satisfactory? It's fine, Naruto assured her. Strange to be back in a student role, but I'm managing. Good. Remember our agreement. If you sense anything unusual, contact me immediately. She hesitated, then added. And Naruto-kun, despite all the politics and complications, I'm genuinely glad you're here. You bring a fascinating new perspective to our world. The sincerity in her voice caught him off guard. Thanks, Rias, for everything you're doing to help. As they parted ways at the club room door, Naruto found himself reflecting on the day's revelations. Previous travelers from his world, connections to Fox yokai, the complex politics of devils, angels, and fallen. It was overwhelming, yet strangely exhilarating too. This world, for all its differences, had rules and patterns he could learn. Allies he could cultivate, mysteries he could solve, and perhaps, somewhere in those mysteries, lay the path home. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, The Shinobi of Kuo. Dawn painted Kuo town in hues of amber and gold as Naruto completed his third lap around the school grounds. Sweat glistened on his forehead despite the morning chill, his breath forming small clouds in the air. After a week in this new world, he'd established a rigorous training regimen, the one constant from his previous life that grounded him amid the strangeness. 5 kilometers before sunrise, 200 push-ups, 300 kunai throws at improvised targets in the nearby forest. Chakra control exercises that had once been trivial now required intense concentration, his reduced reserves. Demanding precision he hadn't needed since Genin days. Still slow, he muttered, checking the digital watch Rias had provided. His enhanced speed remained impressive by human standards, but nowhere near his peak abilities. Whether this limitation stemmed from the dimensional transfer, this world's different physical laws, or Kurama's diminished presence remained unclear. Finishing his final set of one-handed handstand push-ups, Naruto sensed a presence approaching, one he'd grown familiar with over the past days. Good morning, Kaneko-san, he called without turning, completing his exercise with a controlled flip to his feet. The small white-haired girl emerged from behind a tree, her school uniform pristine despite the early hour. As usual, her expression revealed little, though Naruto had begun to detect subtle variations in her stoicism. Morning, she replied simply. You trained differently today. Naruto nodded, impressed by her observation. Testing different muscle groups. In my world, I'd incorporate shadow clones for sparring, but, he gestured vaguely, I'm conserving chakra until I understand how it replenishes here. Kaneko considered this, then surprised him by dropping into a combat stance. I can spar, if you want. The offer caught him off guard. Since their brief conversation about the Fox yokai text, Kaneko had been more approachable, occasionally joining him during lunch periods or offering terse insights about Devil Society. But this was the first direct engagement she'd initiated. You sure? He asked, studying her stance with professional interest. Her form was impeccable, balanced, grounded, yet ready for explosive movement. Won't break, she stated flatly, a hint of indignation in her tone. Naruto smiled. Never thought you would. He mirrored her stance, deliberately adopting the academy basics rather than his usual style. Taijutsu only, or are your devil abilities allowed? Both, she decided after a moment's consideration. Limited strength. No chakra explosives. Quote, fair enough. They circled each other in the dawn light, assessing. Naruto made the first move, a straightforward palm strike designed to test her reactions rather than connect. Kaneko pivoted with surprising grace, her counterattack a lightning-fast jab that would have cracked ribs had Naruto not twisted aside. Good speed, he acknowledged, genuinely impressed. What followed was an increasingly complex dance of strikes, blocks, and counterattacks. Kaneko fought with devastating efficiency, no wasted motion, each strike precisely targeted to vulnerable points. Naruto recognized the hallmarks of someone trained to overcome larger opponents through technique rather than brute force. For his part, he deliberately cycled through different taijutsu styles, academy basics. The frog kata of the toads, even elements of Lee's strong fist. Each shift caused momentary confusion in Kaneko's defense, though she adapted with remarkable speed. 10 minutes into their spar, Naruto saw an opening and executed a perfect sweep that sent Kaneko airborne. To his surprise, she adjusted mid-fall, tiny white ears and a tail suddenly manifesting as she righted herself with feline agility. The transformation was instantaneous and apparently involuntary. Her eyes widened in alarm as she realized what had happened, the appendages vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. Naruto pretended not to notice, flowing seamlessly back into his stance. Nice recovery. Kaneko stood frozen for a moment, studying his face for signs of disgust or fear. Finding none, she cautiously resumed her position, though tension now radiated from her small frame. "We can stop if you want," Naruto offered gently. "No." The word came out sharper than usual. After a deep breath, she added more evenly, "Continue." They resumed with slightly diminished intensity, though Naruto sensed Kaneko's focus had shifted inward, her movements more mechanical than before. After another 5 minutes, he called a halt. "Great session. You're incredibly skilled. Those strikes pack serious power." Kaneko nodded silently, her eyes fixed on the ground. "You know," Naruto ventured carefully, "in my world, animal traits were common among certain clans. The Inuzuka had canine features, the Aburame hosted insects within their bodies." "Not the same," she murmured. "Maybe not," he acknowledged. "But differences weren't feared where I come from, they were valued. Specialized abilities made stronger teams." Kaneko finally met his gaze, something vulnerable flickering behind her stoic mask. "People fear what they don't understand." "True, but fear comes from ignorance. The wise see uniqueness as strength." Naruto paused, then decided to take a risk. "The fox energy I sense in you, it's different from what I carried. But there are similarities. You control it well." Her eyes widened fractionally. "I don't use it." "That's your choice," he said with a respectful nod. "But suppressing natural abilities takes constant energy. Energy that could be directed elsewhere." Kaneko absorbed this in silence, her expression thoughtful rather than closed. Finally, she simply stated, "Breakfast time. Bushu expects you at the council meeting. 9 o'clock. The abrupt subject change signaled the end of their conversation, but Naruto sensed a shift, a microscopic lowering of barriers. Rome wasn't built in a day, and trust with Kaneko Tuju wouldn't be either. "I'll be there," he promised, gathering his training gear. "Thanks for the spar. Same time tomorrow." She hesitated briefly before nodding once. "Tomorrow." Then she turned and walked away, her posture slightly less rigid than when she'd arrived. Progress, Naruto thought with satisfaction. Small steps. The student council room exuded formality and precision, from the meticulous arrangement of furniture to the perfectly aligned documents on the central table. It matched its president's personality perfectly. Naruto reflected as Sona Citri adjusted her glasses with mathematical precision. "Uzumaki-san, thank you for joining us," she said, her tone professional rather than welcoming. "I believe introductions are in order." Arranged around the room were 7 individuals whom Naruto recognized from school but hadn't formally met. Each wore the distinctive armband of the student council, and each radiated the subtle energy signature of devils. "My peerage," Sona explained, confirming Naruto's assessment. "Unlike Rias's group, we operate primarily through the student council, maintaining order. ND addressing supernatural incursions through administrative channels." The juxtaposition almost made Naruto smile, devils using bureaucracy rather than battle. Somehow, it seemed more terrifying. "Tsubaki Shinra, my queen and vice president," Sona began, indicating a tall, elegant girl with long black hair partially covering one eye. Unlike the others who offered polite smiles or nods, Tsubaki studied Naruto with analytical intensity. Her visible eye sharp and assessing. The introductions continued. Momo Hanakai, Rei Kusaka, Tomo Meguri, Tsubasa Yura, Saji Genshiro, and Ruruko Nomura. H displayed distinct personalities despite their uniform presentation, from Saji's barely concealed hostility to Tomo's enthusiastic greeting. I've asked you here for 2 reasons, Sona continued once formalities concluded. First, to officially recognize your autonomous status within our territory, with the conditions previously agreed upon. She pushed a document across the table, an elegant parchment covered in script that seemed to shimmer with subtle power. A magical contract, Naruto asked warily. A recognition pact, Sona corrected. Non-binding but magically witnessed. It acknowledges your presence, our agreement, and provides limited protection from other supernatural factions who might otherwise consider you unclaimed territory. The wording caught Naruto's attention. Unclaimed territory, an unfortunate reality of our world. Tsubaki spoke for the first time, her voice precise and melodious. Beings of significant power who remain unaffiliated are often viewed as resources to be acquired. Like sacred gear users, Saji added with lingering suspicion. Every faction wants them. Naruto examined the document carefully, appreciating Sona's directness. Unlike Rias's more personable approach, the C-Tree heiress operated with transparent pragmatism. Both styles had their advantages. This seems fair, he acknowledged, reaching for the ornate pen provided. Before you sign, Sona interjected. You should understand the second reason for this meeting. We require your assistance with a developing situation. Naruto set the pen down, attention sharpening. What kind of situation? A stray devil has been hunting in the industrial district, Tsubaki explained, producing a map marked with red circles. 3 human casualties in the past week, disguised as industrial accidents. Strays are devils who have abandoned or killed their masters, Sona elaborated, correctly interpreting Naruto's questioning look. Without guidance, their demonic power often corrupts them physically and mentally. They become predatory, feral, and it's your responsibility to eliminate them. Naruto guessed. Sona nodded. Devil society operates under strict rules. Strays who prey on humans jeopardize the secrecy and stability we've maintained for centuries. Normally, Rias's group would handle this as it falls under combat operations, but they're currently investigating another matter related to your arrival, Tsubaki finished. President Rias is consulting archives about dimensional disturbances. Understanding dawned. So you need backup for hunting this stray. We need observation. Sona corrected. Your combat capabilities are evident from reports, but your tactical approach remains unknown. This mission provides mutual benefit. We gain additional support, while you gain insight into supernatural threats in this world. The strategic thinking impressed Naruto. By framing the request as an exchange rather than a favor, Sona maintained diplomatic balance while addressing a practical need. When do we start? He asked, signing the recognition pact with a flourish. Relief flickered briefly across several council members' faces, though Sona's expression remained unchanged. Tonight, after sunset, the stray appears to follow a pattern, hunting near the abandoned steelworks. Tsubaki will coordinate with you on preparations, Sona continued, rising to signal the meeting's conclusion. The rest of you, return to your regular duties. Maintain observation protocols throughout the day in case the stray alters its pattern. As the council members dispersed, Tsubaki approached Naruto with a slim folder. These are the incident reports and witness statements, she explained, her manner professional yet less rigid than her president's. While heavily redacted for human authorities, they contain details about the stray's hunting methods and possible abilities. Naruto accepted the folder, noting the meticulous organization. You're very thorough. In matters of life and death, thoroughness is essential, she replied. Unlike some who rely on power alone, the C-Tree approach prioritizes intelligence and preparation. The subtle critique of Rias's more direct methods didn't escape Naruto's notice. Both approaches have merit in different situations, he observed diplomatically. Tsubaki's visible eye widened fractionally, reassessing him. Indeed, a balanced perspective is uncommon among those of significant power. Power without strategy is just destruction, Naruto shrugged. I learned that lesson the hard way. As did many devils during the Great War, she acknowledged with unexpected openness. Your world had similar conflicts. The Fourth Great Ninja War had just concluded when I was transported here, Naruto revealed, surprising himself with his willingness to share. Something about Tsubaki's analytical demeanor invited candor. She seemed to value information for its practical application rather than potential advantage. A ninja war, she echoed, genuine curiosity breaking through her composure. Your society maintained traditional shinobi structures into modern warfare. Not exactly traditional, Naruto clarified, smiling at her interest. Our techniques evolved over centuries, integrating chakra manipulation with strategy and technology. Tsubaki's questions continued as they walked through the school hallways, her initial professional distance gradually warming through intellectual engagement. Unlike most people Naruto had encountered in this world, her interest focused on systems and methodologies rather than raw power demonstrations, how chakra networks functioned, how village alliances operated, how mission rankings balanced risk against resources. By the time they reached the courtyard, Naruto found himself explaining the complex dynamics of the 5 great nations with animated gestures, while Tsubaki occasionally interrupted with incisive questions that revealed remarkable strategic thinking. Your analysis of inter-village politics is surprisingly sophisticated, she noted during a pause in their conversation. I had the impression you were more combat-oriented. Naruto rubbed the back of his head self-consciously. I wasn't always great at the theoretical stuff. But when you're responsible for alliance negotiations during wartime, you learn quickly. You held a leadership position, she asked, reassessing him again. Not officially, he admitted. But sometimes people listen even without titles. Tsubaki studied him with new interest before glancing at her watch. I should return to council duties. For tonight's operation, meet at this location at 10 p.m., she indicated a point on the map she'd provided. Dress for combat but maintain low visibility. The stray may have enhanced senses. Understood, Naruto confirmed, appreciating her professionalism. I look forward to working with you, Shinra-san. Tsubaki is acceptable, she offered with formal politeness. We will be risking our lives together, after all. As she walked away, Naruto found himself intrigued by the contrast between Rias's warm openness and the more reserved intellectual connection he'd just experienced with Tsubaki. Both approaches had their appeal, he realized, different facets of connection that revealed varied aspects of his own personality. His musing was interrupted by a familiar voice calling his name. Turning, he spotted Kiba approaching with a purposeful stride. Bushu sent me to find you, the blonde devil explained. She's made a discovery about the dimensional archives that she believes you should see immediately. The occult research club room had transformed since Naruto's last visit. Ancient books and scrolls covered every surface. Magical diagrams floated in the air, and what appeared to be a 3-dimensional map of intersecting realities hovered above Rias's desk. Naruto-kun, Rias greeted, looking up from a particularly ancient tome. Dark circles beneath her eyes suggested she'd been researching through the night, though her enthusiasm remained undimmed. Thank you for coming quickly. I believe we've found something significant. Akeno materialized from a side room carrying a tray of tea, her customary smile tinged with concern as she glanced at Rias. Our president has been rather dedicated in her research. Sleep can wait, Rias dismissed, gesturing toward the floating diagram. This is a metaphysical mapping of dimensional boundaries as understood by ancient devil scholars. According to these texts, reality consists of nested dimensional layers, some parallel, others perpendicular, all separated by barriers of varying permeability. Despite his limited scientific background, Naruto grasped the concept through its similarity to certain space-time theories Kakashi had once explained. Like Kamui's pocket dimension, but on a larger scale. Rias's eyes lit with interest. You have experience with dimensional manipulation in your world. Limited experience, Naruto clarified. Certain Kekkei Genkai, bloodline abilities, allowed users to access or create dimensional spaces. My friend Akashi could transport objects to another dimension with his Sharingan eye. Fascinating, Rias murmured, making notes. That supports our theory. Look here, she indicated a specific intersection O.N. the diagram where 2 energy patterns seem to overlap. This represents what ancient texts called resonant dimensions, realities that share fundamental metaphysical properties despite different physical laws. Naruto leaned closer, noting how one energy pattern pulsed with a familiar blue glow while the other shimmered with the multicolored energies he'd come to associate with this world's supernatural powers. You think the elemental nations in this world are resonant dimensions? He guessed. Precisely, Rias confirmed with approval. According to these accounts, resonant dimensions occasionally experience, bleed through, during moments of extreme energy discharge. The barriers thin, allowing transference of matter or energy. Like during my battle with Kagaya, Naruto realized. The combined chakra output was unprecedented, all 9-tailed beasts, plus Sasuke's and my 6 paths power. Creating conditions for dimensional displacement, Akeno concluded. But there's more. The resonance appears to be specific rather than general. Rias nodded, flipping pages in a different book. This text describes what happens to beings transported between resonant dimensions. The IR fundamental energy, chakra in your case, seeks equivalent expression in the new reality. What does that mean practically? Naruto asked, trying to process the implications. It means, Rias explained, eyes meeting his directly, that your chakra is gradually adapting to this world's metaphysical structure. The diminishment you've experienced isn't permanent loss but temporary conversion. Hope flared in Naruto's chest. So my abilities could return. Even Kurama. Theoretically, yes, Rias confirmed cautiously. But not in their original form. Your chakra would express itself through is world's magical systems rather than your own. Like learning to speak the same language with a different accent, Akeno suggested with an elegant metaphor. Naruto considered this, unconsciously. Reaching for the dormant spark of Kurama's presence within him. Is there any way to accelerate the process? Perhaps, Rias mused, tapping a diagram showing energy transference between systems. E-text suggests that resonant energies can catalyze adaptation. In practical terms, exposure to this world's magical energies might help your chakra adjust faster. Exposure how? Naruto pressed. Two devil women exchanged significant glances before Rias answered. The most direct method would be through an evil piece. The chess pieces that turn humans into devils, Naruto recalled from previous explanations. You want to reincarnate me? It's one option, Rias clarified hastily. The evil pieces work by converting human life force into demonic energy. In your case, the process might be more synergistic than transformative, adapting your chakra rather than replacing it. Naruto frowned, uncomfortable with the suggestion. Are there alternatives? Several, though less efficient, Akeno replied. Regular exposure to demonic energy through training with us. Consumption of foods from the underworld. Potentially, contact with Yukai energy, which might resonate more naturally with your fox chakra. Let's start with those, Naruto decided firmly. I appreciate the offer, Rias, but becoming a devil, even partially, is a significant step I'm not ready to consider. Rather than appearing disappointed, Rias nodded with respect. I expected as much. Your independence is something I admire, Naruto-kun. We'll explore the alternatives thoroughly. Their conversation shifted to practical applications, with Rias suggesting modified training exercises to expose Naruto to controlled amounts of demonic energy. Hiba offered to serve as a sparring partner, while Akeno proposed methods for Naruto to sense and interact with the magical currents that permeated Kuo town. Throughout the discussion, Naruto noticed subtle shifts in both Rias and Akeno's demeanor toward him, a growing warmth that transcended their initial diplomatic interest. Whether born from intellectual engagement with his unique situation or genuine personal connection, the change was noticeable and not unwelcome. As the planning concluded, Naruto remembered his evening commitment. I should mention, Sona asked for my assistance with a stray devil hunt tonight. Rias's expression registered surprise or settling into thoughtful consideration. That's unusually direct of Sona. She typically keeps her peerage operations separate from ours. Apparently your research on my behalf left a gap in the combat roster, Naruto explained. She presented it as a mutual benefit. They get backup, I gain experience with this world's threats. Pragmatic as always, Rias murmured with a mixture of affection and exasperation for her fellow heiress. Well, it's an excellent opportunity to test your abilities in a controlled situation. Stray devils can be dangerous but are generally manageable with proper tactics. Would you like one of us to accompany you? Kiba offered. I've participated in joint operations with the C3 group before. Naruto shook his head. Thanks, but I think this is partly a test of trust. Better if I handle it as agreed. Just be careful, Rias cautioned. Stray devils undergo unpredictable mutations. Their abilities don't always match their original powers. Speaking of abilities, Akeno interjected. Perhaps we should see how Naruto-kun's techniques function in combat conditions before tonight's hunt. A friendly spar might provide valuable insights. The suggestion made practical sense. And soon they had relocated to a warded clearing in the forest behind the school, an area Rias explained was protected by powerful illusions to prevent human interruption. These barriers will contain most energy discharges, she explained, activating additional protections with a gesture. Feel free to demonstrate your abilities without concern for detection. Kiba stepped forward, a sword materializing in his hand from seemingly nowhere. I would be honored to test your combat style, Naruto-san. The blade caught Naruto's attention immediately, not just for its sudden appearance but for the subtle darkness it emanated. That sword, it absorbs light. Holy eraser, Kiba confirmed with pride. My sacred gear, Sword Birth, allows me to create demonic swords with various properties. This one devours light and holy energy. A weapon born directly from your soul, Naruto mused, recalling previous explanations of sacred gears. Interesting system. In my world, weapons were physical objects. Though some could be channeled with chakra. Shall we begin? Kiba suggested, sliding into a graceful fencing stance. Perhaps start without your chakra techniques, just physical abilities. Naruto nodded, dropping into a balanced stance that incorporated elements of academy basics with the more fluid positioning he'd developed over years of combat. Ready when you are. What followed was an intricate dance of attack and defense that quickly escalated from cautious testing to genuine martial challenge. Kiba moved with extraordinary speed, faster than most. Chunin-level shinobi, his swordsmanship blending European precision with Japanese fluidity in a style uniquely his own. Naruto matched him without chakra enhancement, relying on natural reflexes and adult instincts honed through countless life or death encounters. Where Kiba had technical perfection, Naruto countered with unpredictable adaptability, switching between formal stances and street-fighting pragmatism mid-combination. Impressive, Kiba acknowledged after 5 minutes of increasingly complex exchanges. Your foundation is solid but your adaptations are unlike any swordsmanship school I've studied. Because it's not swordsmanship, Naruto explained between breaths. Shinobi taijutsu incorporates elements from multiple disciplines based on mission requirements. We learn to sue NTER weapon specialists without becoming specialists ourselves. Show me, Kiba challenged, his eyes alight with professional interest. Use your techniques. I'll increase my speed as well. Naruto grinned, the familiar thrill of friendly competition energizing him. If you insist. Chakra flowed through his pathways as he formed a familiar hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 perfect copies materialized beside him, each grinning with identical determination. Kiba's eyes widened momentarily before his expression shifted to excited calculation. Multiple opponents. Then I'll need multiple weapons. With a flourish, he stabbed Holy Eraser into the ground, then raised his hands as blue-white energy coalesced around him. Sword Birth. The ground erupted as various blades emerged like metallic plants, longswords. Short stabbing weapons, curved sabers, each radiating different properties. Kiba grasped 2 in a reverse grip, their edges glinting dangerously in the afternoon light. Now we can begin properly, he declared with a swordsman's focused intensity. What had been a skilled sparring match transformed into a spectacular display of supernatural combat. Kiba moved between Naruto's clones with blinding speed, his dual swords leaving trails of darkness as they sliced through the air. The clones countered with synchronized attacks, using each other as springboards and distractions to create openings. From the sidelines, Rias and Akeno watched with undisguised fascination. His clone technique is remarkable, Rias observed. Not illusions but physical duplicates WITH independent thought and perfect coordination. More impressive is how efficiently they use chakra, Akeno noted. Each movement is economical yet effective. There's wisdom in his fighting style, not just power. The spar escalated further when Kiba unleashed a technique he called Blade Blacksmith, creating holy swords to complement his demonic arsenal. Naruto countered by introducing elemental manipulation, coating his kunai with wind chakra to extend their cutting range. Enough, Rias finally called after 15 intense minutes. Save something for tonight's hunt. Both combatants stepped back, breathing heavily but grinning with mutual respect. Kiba's swords dissolved into particles of light as he bowed formally to Naruto. It was an honor. Your techniques are unlike anything in our world. Likewise, Naruto returned the bow. Your sword style would give even specialized weapon users in my world serious trouble. As they walked back toward the group, Naruto noticed the calculating gleam in Rias's eyes. What are you thinking? He asked directly. I'm thinking, she replied with thoughtful precision, that your abilities complement ours in fascinating ways. Devils typically specialize in power-based magic, destructive, transformative, or manipulative. Your techniques emphasize multiplicity, adaptation, and tactical flexibility. A valuable perspective for tonight's hunt, Akeno added. The C-Tree group tends toward strategic planning. Your improvisational approach might provide the unexpected element needed against an unpredictable target. Their assessment was accurate, Naruto realized. His fighting style had always incorporated adaptability, a necessity for someone who'd begun with limited techniques and gradually expanded his arsenal through unorthodox combinations. I should prepare for tonight, he said, noting the sun's position. Any specific advice for hunting strays? Rias's expression turned more serious. Don't underestimate their instincts. Strays lose rational thought but gain heightened survival drives. They'll retreat rather than face certain defeat, only to ambush when conditions favor them. And be careful of their corruption, Akeno warned. Her usual playfulness absent, stray devil energy can contaminate wounds, causing continuing damage unless cleansed with holy or purified demonic power. Think of them as Rabiden, immels with human intelligence and supernatural abilities, Kiba added grimly. Dangerous not just for what they can do, but for what they're willing to do. Naruto absorbed their advice, recognizing the genuine concern behind the warnings. I'll be careful. This isn't my first hunt against transformed enemies. As they reached the school grounds, Rias placed a hand on his arm, her touch conveying seriousness beyond her words. We'll continue our research while you're with Sona's group. If anything significant emerges about dimensional travel or chakra adaptation, I'll contact you immediately. Thank you, Naruto replied sincerely, for everything you're doing to help. It's not entirely selfless, she admitted with surprising candor. Your presence here, it's changed things. Opened possibilities I hadn't considered before. Before Naruto could ask what she meant, Akeno intervened with practiced smoothness. You should rest before tonight's hunt. Stray devil confrontations can be unpredictable. With final words of encouragement from Kiba and a thoughtful parting glance from Rias, Naruto headed back to his dormitory room to prepare. The afternoon's training had confirmed had he begun to suspect. His fighting style, while diminished in raw power, maintained its core advantages of unpredictability and tactical versatility. Tonight would test those advantages against this world's dangers. A practical examination after a week of theoretical learning. Despite the potential danger, Naruto felt a familiar anticipation building, the focused readiness that preceded missions in his previous life. He was, after all, still a shinobi, and this hunt would be his first mission in a new world. The abandoned steelworks loomed against the night sky like the skeleton of some massive industrial beast. Moonlight gleamed on rusted gantries and broken windows, creating shifting patterns of shadow and illumination across the complex's decaying structures. Atmospheric, Naruto murmured as he joined the assembled C-Tree group at their rendezvous point. Do strays typically choose locations from horror movies, or is this a coincidence? Tsubaki, who had been reviewing tactical overlays on a specialized device, glanced up with the ghost of a smile. An astute observation. Strays are drawn to locations with residual emotional imprints. This facility closed after a catastrophic accident that killed 17 workers. It resonates with pain and fear. They feed on negative emotions. Naruto asked, drawing parallels to certain entities from his own world. Not directly, Sona answered, approaching with silent precision. But such emotions thin the barriers between physical and spiritual planes, making it easier for them to access corrupted demonic energy. He student council president looked dramatically different from her school persona. Gone was the prim uniform, replaced by a form-fitting combat outfit in midnight blue with silver runic patterns along its seams. Her glasses remained, though Naruto suspected they served magical purposes beyond vision correction. Our target has been designated Viscera, she continued crisply. Female originally, now heavily mutated. Witness reports indicate arachnid lower body with humanoid torso, acidic secretions, and possible psychic attacks targeting fear responses. Cheerful, Naruto commented, appreciating the thorough briefing. Containment or elimination? Elimination, Tsubaki replied without hesitation. This stray has killed 9 humans, not 3 as initially reported. Rehabilitation is not an option. Naruto nodded, understanding the grim necessity. In his world, missing nin who crossed certain lines were similarly designated for execution rather than capture. We'll operate in 3 teams, Sona explained, indicating positions on a holographic map that materialized between them. Tsubasa and Tomo will secure the perimeter to prevent escape. Momo, Rhea, and Ruruko will maintain a barrier to contain energy discharge and prevent detection. Saji, Tsubaki, myself, and you, Uzumaki-san, will form the direct engagement team. The plan was tactically sound: containment, concealment, and confrontation distributed according to specialization. Naruto noted how each member automatically moved to their assigned positions without question or hesitation, speaking to well-established protocols and training. Your role, Sona continued, addressing Naruto specifically, will be observation and support initially. If the situation escalates beyond projections, you have authorization for direct intervention. Understood, Naruto confirmed, appreciating being included while respecting their established team dynamics. Any specific signals I should watch for? Tsubaki will coordinate, Sona replied. Her Mirror Alice sacred gear allows limited reflection of attacks. If you see her deploy the mirror directly, it indicates escalation to full engagement. With final positioning confirmed, the teams separated to their designated areas. Naruto followed the primary engagement group as they approached the main facility entrance, a massive corroded door hanging precariously from industrial hinges. Saji, Sona directed with a subtle gesture. The male devil stepped forward, extending his hand as a ghostly blue-white line materialized from his palm. Absorption line, he murmured. The energy connecting to the door's hinges and drawing something from them, power, mass, or possibly both, until the massive portal sagged further and created a gap large enough to enter without the noise of forcing it open. Impressive control, Naruto noted quietly. Vritra's sacred gear, Saji replied with undisguised pride. One of 4 fragments of the prison dragon's power. Inside, he facility opened into a cavernous main floor once filled with machinery, now a shadowy labyrinth of rusted equipment and collapsed gantries. The moon penetrated through broken skylights, creating poles of silver amid overwhelming darkness. Naruto immediately activated his sensory perception, a technique that had grown more refined since his arrival in this world. Where chakra signatures had once been his primary focus, he now detected the varied supernatural energies of this reality with increasing clarity. 3 levels down, he whispered, detecting a malevolent presence radiating corrupted energy. Moving periodically, seems to be feeding. Sona and Tsubaki exchanged surprised glances at his immediate detection. Confirmed, Tsubaki murmured after consulting her device. Demency, onal distortion consistent with stray devil activity detected on sub-level 3. How did you sense it through the interference? Different method, Naruto explained succinctly. I'm tracking the eruption pattern rather than the entity itself, like following poisoned water to its source. Sona's expression remained neutral, but her slight nod conveyed approval. An effective approach. Let's proceed. They descended through the facility with practiced stealth, communicating through hand signals that Naruto found surprisingly similar to Anbu protocols from his world. Each level revealed gray, aether decay and more ominous signs, claw marks scoring concrete walls, acidic residue burning through metal floors, and most disturbing, cocoon-like structures hanging from exposed pipes. Preservation method, Tsubaki explained in a whisper, noting Naruto's attention on the cocoons. Strays often store living prey for extended feeding. The implication turned Naruto's stomach, but he maintained professional focus. This wasn't so different from missions against particularly twisted missing nin or corrupted summoning creatures. The third sub-level opened into what had once been a maintenance bay for heavy equipment. Now it resembled a macabre nest, the floor covered with a substance resembling webbing intermixed with organic matter Naruto preferred not to identify. The corrupted energy Satu raided the area so densely that it manifested as visible miasma, coiling like serpents through the air. In the center of this nightmare tableau crouched their target. Viscera had clearly once been human-shaped, but corruption had twisted her beyond recognition. Her lower body comprised 8 massive arachnid limbs supporting a torso that maintained humanoid features only in the most grotesque approximation. Multiple arms sprouted at unnatural angles, some ending in claws, others in writhing tentacles. Her face retained beautiful feminine features on one side, while the other had split vertica. LLY to reveal mandibles and cluster eyes glinting with malevolent intelligence. Most disturbing was her activity, feeding on something unmistakably human while crooning a broken lullaby in a voice T alternated between sweet soprano and guttural growls. Fresh meat comes to mother's table, she suddenly announced without looking up. Devil meat, sweet meat, power meat. Her head rotated unnaturally, and something new, something mother hasn't tasted before. Her cluster eyes fixed directly on Naruto despite his concealment in shadows. You smell different, not devil, not angel, not human. Mother wants to taste your insides. Sona gave a sharp hand signal, and the engagement plan activated with precision. Saji's absorption lines shot out from multiple angles, attempting to bind the stray's limbs. Simultaneously, Sona unleashed a torrent of water-based demonic magic that solidified into restraining ice upon contact. The stray's reaction defied their calculations. Rather than struggling against the bindings, she liquefied portions of her body to slip through them, reforming with nauseating fluidity while launching globules of acid toward her attackers. Adaptation capability exceeds projections, Tsubaki reported calmly, her mirror materializing to reflect an acid attack back at the creature. Recalculating engagement parameters, Naruto observed the devil's coordinate. TED response with professional appreciation. Despite the target exceeding their intelligence assessments, they adjusted fluidly, Sona altering her water magic to create barriers rather than restraints. Saji shifting from binding to energy drainage, Tsubaki providing defensive coverage while analyzing attack patterns. Yet the stray continued adapting with unnatural speed, as if each counter revealed new evolutionary paths for her corrupted form to explore. When Sona's water proved effective, she developed heat glands that turned the liquid to steam. When Saji drained her energy from one limb, he detached it and grew a replacement with modified capabilities. She's learning too fast, Naruto noted with growing concern. Each attack gives her more information to evolve against. The assessment proved grimly accurate as Viscera suddenly unleashed a psychic attack. Waves of concentrated fear that sent Saji to his knees and caused even the stoic Sona to falter momentarily. Limiting emotional suppression field detected, Tsubaki reported, her voice tight with effort. She's neutralizing our mental defenses. Naruto felt the psychic assault wash over him like cold water, unpleasant but largely ineffective against someone who had faced the collective hatred of an entire village, battled pain, and stared down Madara Uchiha. The Nine-Tails' hatred had been exponentially more potent than this creature's fear projection. Permission to engage directly, he requested, seeing Tsubaki's mirror crack under a particularly vicious acid spray. Granted, Sona confirmed, regaining her composure with impressive speed. Coordinate with Tsubaki, Naruto moved without hesitation, shadow clones materializing in a semicircle as he leapt into direct engagement range. The stray's cluster eyes widened at the multiple identical targets, momentary confusion disrupting her adaptation cycle. What magic is this? She hissed, acid spraying indiscriminately. Many meat from one meat. Mother is confused. That's the idea, Naruto replied grimly as his clones attacked from multiple angles, forcing her to defend in several directions simultaneously. The devils immediately recognized his street rated and adjusted their approach. Sona focusing her water magic to neutralize acid attacks, Saji deploying absorption lines to target exposed energy points identified by the clones, probing attacks. Tsubaki providing strategic coverage where defenses thinned. For a creature that had been rapidly adapting to predictable patterns, Naruto's shadow clones presented an insurmountable challenge. Each O paraded independently yet in perfect coordination, using varied attack vectors while collecting and sharing tactical information. The central mass, a clone called out after being dissolved by acid, but dispersing its knowledge to the others. Primary corruption node beneath the human torso. Naruto synchronized instantly with Tsubaki, whose analytical mind processed the information at remarkable speed. Reflection point identified, she confirmed. Can you create an opening through the upper abdominal region? On it, Naruto confirmed, two clones immediately launching themselves in a Saker. Official charge that drew Viscera's defensive focus upward while the original circled behind. Wind release. Vacuum blade. He called, compressing and sharpening his chakra into an invisible cutting DGE that sliced through the creature's rear defenses, exposing the pulsating corruption core beneath chitinous plating. Tsubaki's mirror deployed with perfect timing, positioned to reflect Sona's concentrated water spear directly into the exposed core. The precision was surgical. The reflected attack quadrupled in power as it passed through Tsubaki's sacred gear, striking the corruption node with devastation beyond its original capacity. Viscera's scream transcended normal sound, vibrating at frequencies that shattered remaining windows and cracked concrete pillars. Her body convulsed, adapta. Chion capabilities overloaded as the purifying properties of Sona's water magic, enhanced by Tsubaki's reflection, coursed through her corrupted core. Finishing protocol, Sona announced dispassionately, gesturing to Saji who deployed all his absorption lines simultaneously, drawing the creature's remaining energy in a controlled extraction that prevented final stage mutation, a common last-ditch survival mechanism among cornered strays. Within moments, what had been a nightmarish abomination collapsed into rapidly disintegrating organic matter, the corruption that had sustained its unnatural existence neutralized by their combined assault. Target eliminated, Tsubaki confirmed after scanning the remains. No residual energy detected. Purification complete. Naruto dispersed his remaining clones, absorbing their collective experiences and observations. The engagement had been enlightening. Devils fought with precision and tactical cohesion despite their varied abilities, prioritizing efficiency over spectacle. Your contribution was significant, Sona acknowledged as they secured the area. Particularly the identification of the corruption node and the diversionary tactics. Coming from her, Naruto recognized the statement as high praise. Your team's coordination is impressive. The way you adapted to incorporate my abilities without disrupting established patterns speaks to excellent training. The shadow clone technique, Tsubaki observed thoughtfully. It creates perfect duplicates with independent thought yet collective memory. Naruto nodded. When they disperse, their experiences return to me. It's useful for reconnaissance and overwhelming opponents with multiple attack vectors. And information gathering, Sona added perceptively. One could learn complex subjects at exponentially accelerated rates with such a technique. The observation surprised Naruto, who had admittedly used the technique more for combat than intellectual pursuits throughout most of his career. That's actually true. I haven't utilized that aspect to its full potential. A shame, Sona remarked with genuine regret. Such an ability would revolutionize educational methodologies. Their conversation continued as they methodically cleared the facility, ensuring no trace of supernatural activity remained that might attract human investigation. The barrier team reported successful containment of energy discharge, while the perimeter team confirmed no witnesses to their operation. As they prepared to depart, Tsubaki approached Naruto privately. Your performance exceeded projections, she stated with professional admiration. Most beings of significant power rely on overwhelming force rather than tactical integration. Where I come from, overwhelming force attracts overwhelming problems. Naruto replied with a wry smile. I learned to work smarter when working harder wasn't enough. Something shifted in Tsubaki's expression, a subtle softening of her analytical demeanor. An enlightened perspective. Perhaps we could discuss tactical theory further. The Student Council maintains extensive records on supernatural combat methodologies that might interest you. The invitation seemed to surprise Tsubaki herself, as if she'd spoken without her usual careful consideration. Naruto found the momentary vulnerability rather charming from someone who projected such consistent composure. I'd like that, he accepted genuinely. Your mirror technique is fascinating. The ability to reflect and amplify attacks has interesting parallels to certain fuinjutsu concepts from my world. Her visible eye widened with interest. Fuinjutsu, sealing techniques. You've mentioned this discipline before. It's a specialized shinobi art, Naruto explained as they walked. Using symbols and chakra formulas to seal, store, redirect, or amplify energy. Their conversation continued through the return journey, evolving from professional assessment to increasingly enthusiastic exchange of theoretical concepts. Tsubaki revealed herself to be passionately intellectual beneath her reserved exterior, while Naruto surprised himself with how much technical knowledge he actually absorbed during his unconventional training history. By the time they reached the school grounds, Sona was observing their interaction with thoughtful interest, occasionally offering incisive comments that demonstrated her own formidable intellect. We should formalize our findings, she suggested as they concluded their mission debriefing. Uzumaki-san's techniques present unique applications for our standard containment protocols. I can draft an analysis, Tsubaki offered with unusual promptness. Perhaps with Uzumaki-san's input to ensure technical accuracy regarding his abilities. Naruto is fine, he reminded her with a smile. And I'm happy to help, though my theoretical understanding isn't as developed as my practical application. Theory can be derived from practice, Tsubaki countered. Often the most innovative approaches emerge from experiential rather than academic foundations. Their exchange was interrupted by the arrival of Rias, who approached with purposeful strides across the moonlit campus. Her expression conveyed urgency that immediately captured everyone's attention. Successful hunt, she inquired briefly. Target eliminated, Sona confirmed. Your consultant proved valuable. Rias nodded, but her focus remained on Naruto. I need to speak with you immediately. We've discovered something critical about your situation. The Serio, USNESS in her tone raised immediate concern. What is it? Not here, she replied, glancing meaningfully at their surroundings. The club room is secured. If this concerns interdimensional matters, the Citri family has relevant expertise, Sona noted with a hint of territorial pride. Our archives contain extensive documentation on planar intersections. Rias hesitated before acknowledging with a reluctant nod. Your perspective would be valuable, actually. Please join us, Sona. Tsubaki as well, if you wish. The four made their way quickly to the Occult Research Club building, where Ino awaited with an array of ancient texts and magical displays arranged around a central table. Her customary playfulness had been replaced by focused intensity as she manipulated complex magical formulae in the air. I've stabilized the projection, she reported as they entered. But it's deteriorating faster than anticipated. What projection? Naruto asked, stepping forward to examine the shimmering image hovering above the table. The display showed what appeared to be a dimensional map similar to what Rias had demonstrated earlier, but with a critical difference, a bright red pulsing distortion where two planes intersected. We've been monitoring dimensional boundaries since identifying the resonance between our world and what we believe to be your elemental nations, Rias explained rapidly. 3 hours ago, this distortion appeared at the intersection point. A dimensional tear, Sona observed, adjusting her glasses as she studied the projection. Highly unstable but potentially traversable. Naruto's heart raced at the implication. A way home. Possibly, Rias cautioned. But there are complications. First, the tear is deteriorating. We estimate complete collapse within 48 hours. Second, its location is problematic. Kyoto, Akino specified, specifically, within the inner sanctum of the Yukai faction's territory. Which is why I needed to speak with you immediately, Rias continued. Accessing this tear requires permission from Yusaka, the nine-tailed fox leader of the Kyoto Yukai. Permission she is unlikely to grant to devils without significant incentive. Naruto processed the information rapidly, strategic mind engaging with the problem's multiple facets. But she might grant it to me, another fox-associated entity. That's our theory, Rias confirmed. Especially given the historical connection between dimensional travelers from your world and the Kyoto Fox clan. There's more, Akino added soberly. The energy signature of He tear suggests it wasn't naturally occurring. Something or someone from your side appears to be attempting to establish connection. The implication hit Naruto like a physical blow. Someone from The Elemental Nations was searching for him. trying to bring him home. After a week of adjustment to this new reality, the possibility of return struck with unexpected emotional force. "How quickly can we reach Kyoto?" he asked, determination crystallizing. "By conventional means, hours," Sona replied pragmatically. "By magical transportation circle, minutes, but devil transportation into Yukai Tear. Ritari would trigger defensive protocols without prior authorization, which we don't have time to secure through normal diplomatic channels," Rias added with frustration. Tsubaki, who had been quietly analyzing the dimensional display, suddenly spoke. "There may be an alternative approach. The Tear's energy signature contains elements consistent with Uzumaki-san's chakra. It's likely keyed to him specifically." "Meaning?" Naruto prompted. "Meaning," Tsubaki elaborated with growing certainty, "that you might be able to establish connection directly, bypassing conventional access requirements. Like a resonance key," Akino realized, immediately adjusting magical parameters. "If we amplify Naruto-kun's unique chakra signature while he focuses on the dimensional coordinates, we potentially create a temporary pathway," Rias completed the thought. "Not physical transportation, but perhaps communication." Hope surged through Naruto. "I could contact whoever is trying to reach me from the other side." "Theoretically," Sona cautioned, "but such an attempt carries significant risks. Unshielded dimensional communication could damage your energetic structure, particularly in your adapted state." "I'll take that risk," Naruto stated without hesitation. The next hour passed in intensive preparation as the four young women worked with remarkable coordination despite their different factions and methodologies. Rias and Akino established a protective circle using devil magic to shield Naruto's physical form, while Sona calculated precise dimensional coordinates and T's. Ubiki created a specialized mirror array to amplify his chakra signature toward the tier. Throughout the process, Naruto centered himself through meditation, reaching deep within to the dormant fragment of Kurama's chakra. The fox's presence remained unresponsive to communication, but the familiar energy stirred slightly as Naruto channeled it toward the surface. "We're ready," Rias finally announced. The room transformed into an elaborate magical workshop centered around Naruto's meditative position. "Once we begin, maintain absolute focus on your connection to your world. Visualize those you believe might be searching for you. If you experience severe disruption to your chakra system, we'll terminate immediately," Tsubaki added with professional concern that didn't quite mask personal worry. Naruto nodded, settling deeper into meditation posture. "I'm ready." The combined magical array activated with a surge of multicolored energy, Rias's crimson power intertwining with Akino's lightning-infused darkness. Sona's water-based calculations providing structure while Tsubaki's mirrors created perfect amplification channels. Within this supernatural framework, Naruto reached for his chakra, drawing it upward and outward with practiced control. The familiar blue energy emerged from his core, swirling around him before flowing into the established channels. "Contact established with the dimensional tear," Sona reported, monitoring magical displays. "Resonance at 47% and climbing. Energetic stability holding," Tsubaki added, adjusting her mirrors to optimize flow. "Chakra signature broadcasting clearly." Naruto barely heard them, his consciousness stretching across an impossible distance, seeking familiar connections from his home world. Images flashed through his mind. Konoha's Hokage monument. The village gates, training ground 3 where Team 7 had first formed. Resonance at 73%, Sona's voice seemed to come from very far away. Dimensional barrier thinning at contact point. A sensation like falling without moving overtook Naruto as his consciousness passed through layers of reality, drawn toward a distant light that felt achingly familiar. As he approached this metaphysical beacon, impressions began filtering through, emotions, fragments of thoughts, and finally, recognizable chakra signatures. Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi. They were alive. Relief flooded through him, momentarily disrupting the delicate connection. "Stabilize your emotions," Rias's voice cautioned from what seemed like another lifetime. "The connection fluctuates with your emotional state." With practiced discipline, Naruto centered himself once more, reaching deliberately toward the familiar signatures. The connection strengthened, and suddenly he could perceive them, his teammates gathered around what appeared to be an elaborate sealing array, their chakra focused intently on maintaining a connection. "Naruto." A voice, Sasuke's, echoed across dimensions, distorted but recognizable. Are you there? I'm here. Naruto projected his thoughts toward the connection. I'm alive. In another world. We know, came the fragmented reply. Kagaya's dimensional seal, activated during final attack. The connection wavered, fragments of communication lost to dimensional static. Searching for weeks. Finally located, dimensional resonance. Weeks. Naruto projected in confusion. I've only been here 7 days. Time flows differently. Sakura's voice this time. 6 weeks here, since you disappeared. The revelation stunned him. Demency. Onal displacement affected temporal flow as well. What other differences existed between the worlds? Can you bring me back? Naruto asked the critical question. The response came in broken fragments. Emotional urgency carrying across dimensions where words failed. Working on. Seal array. Need time. Connection unstable. The dimensional tear is collapsing. Akino's warning penetrated Naruto's trance state. Energy destabilizing rapidly. How much time do you need? Naruto projected desperately toward his teammates. Preparations incomplete. 3 more days, minimum. Sona's voice cut through his concentration. Connection integrity failing. 30 seconds maximum before forced termination. Naruto made a split-second decision. I'll try to reach Kyoto, stabilize the tear from this side. He projected toward his teammates. Look for my chakra signature in 3 days. Acknowledgement flowed back through the connection, determination, hope, and unspoken emotion transcending the dimensional barrier even as words failed. Connection terminating, Tsubaki announced as the magical array began to flicker and distort. Controlled withdrawal initiated. With tremendous effort, Naruto pulled his consciousness back through the dimensional passage, returning to his physical body with a jarring sensation like surfacing from deep water. The magical array collapsed around him. Devils quickly adjusting their spells to cushion the energetic backlash. Naruto-kun. Rias's concerned voice was the first he registered as awareness returned to his immediate surroundings. I'm okay, he managed. Though exhaustion permeated every cell. Made contact. They're alive. Working on bringing me back. Relief visibly washed over the 4 young women, though professional focus quickly reasserted itself. The tear is deteriorating faster than projected, Sona reported, analyzing the magical displays. Your connection accelerated the process. We now estimate 36 hours until complete collapse. And they need 3 days minimum to complete their extraction method, Naruto summarized the dilemma. We need to reach Kyoto immediately. Stabilize the tear from this side. Which returns us to our original problem, Rias noted with frustration. Accessing Yukai territory without proper diplomatic channels. A contemplative silence fell over the group as they confronted the seemingly insurmountable obstacle, until Akino stepped forward with uncharacteristic solemnity. There is one way, she said quietly. Through my mother's family connections. But it requires acknowledging a heritage I've rejected for many years. All eyes turned to the raven-haired beauty, whose usual playful demeanor had vanished completely. My mother was a shrine maiden from a prestigious Shinto family. She explained, each word carrying palpable emotional weight. Before she met my father, the family maintains certain ceremonial connections to the Kyoto Yukai, particularly during major festivals. You never mentioned this aspect of your background, Rias observed softly, concern for her friend evident. Because accessing those connections means confronting memories of buried, Akino replied. Tension evident in her normally smooth voice. But if it means helping Naruto-kun return home, I'm willing. The personal cost of this offer was clearly substantial. Naruto rose, still unsteady from the dimensional connection, and approached her with respectful attention. Akino-san, I won't ask you to confront painful memories for my sake, he said gently. Her violet eyes met his directly. You would do the same for any of us, she stated with quiet certainty. Besides, perhaps it's time I stopped running from that part of myself. The moment stretched. Between them, a connection forming through mutual understanding of painful pasts and the courage required to face them. We'll need to move quickly, Sona interjected, practical as always despite her evident respect for Akino's decision. Preparations for Kyoto should begin immediately. Agreed, Rias nodded, seamlessly shifting to planning mode. Akino, what do you need to establish the connection? Access to my family's shrine outside Tokyo, she replied, newfound determination replacing hesitation. Certain ritual implements that remain there. And, she paused briefly, privacy for what follows. I'll arrange transportation, Rias decided. Sona, can your group maintain observation of the dimensional tear while we're gone? Of course, the C3 heiress confirmed. Tsubaki and I will establish remote monitoring arrays immediately. As the devils quickly organized logistics, Naruto found himself drawn to the window, gazing toward where he imagined Kyoto might lie. After a week of uncertainty, a path home had appeared, tenuous and fraught with complications, but real. Yet something unexpected tugged at his consciousness, not reluctance exactly, but a complexity of emotion he hadn't anticipated. In just 7 days, he had formed connections in this world. Begun to understand its complex supernatural society. Found people who accepted him despite his strangeness. Second thoughts. Tsubaki's voice interrupted his contemplation as she joined him by the window. Not about going home, Naruto clarified. But I didn't expect to feel conflicted about leaving here. Tsubaki studied him with that penetrating analytical gaze that somehow never felt cold despite its intensity. Connections form regardless of our intentions. It's the nature of beings capable of empathy. True, Naruto acknowledged. Where I come from, they call it the will of fire, the connections that bind us beyond blood or obligation. An elegant concept, Tsubaki observed thoughtfully. Quote, we devils have something similar in our understanding of bonds, though typically constrained within peerage structures. Their conversation paused as activity swirled around them, Rias coordinating transportation arrangements. Sona establishing monitoring protocols, Akino gathering specific ritual requirements from hidden compartments within the club room. You've affected us too, you know, Tsubaki added unexpectedly. In just a week, your presence has catalyzed changes that would normally take months or years. Rias and Sona cooperating beyond territorial necessity. Akino confronting her heritage. Even Kaneko beginning to reconsider her relationship with her Yukai nature. The observation gave Naruto pause. Had his arrival truly initiated such significant shifts? Or had he simply become a focal point for changes already building beneath the surface? Before he could pursue this thought further, Rias approached with purposeful strides. Transportation arranged. We leave for Tokyo in 30 minutes. From there, we'll proceed to Akino's family shrine before continuing to Kyoto. Whose? We? Naruto inquired, noting her use of plural. You, myself, Akino, and Kaneko, Rias specified. Kiba will remain to coordinate with Sona's group on monitoring. Kaneko's Yukai heritage, though she rarely acknowledges it, may prove valuable when dealing with the Kyoto faction. The pieces were falling into place with remarkable speed, a testament to the organizational capabilities of these young supernatural leaders. Within the hour, they would be en route to Tokyo, and within a day, potentially at the dimensional tear itself. A path home was opening. Yet as Naruto watched his new allies, perhaps friends, mobilizing on his behalf, that unexpected complexity of emotion deepened. Unnoticed by the room's occupants, a small black cat observed their activities through a window, its golden eyes fixed specifically on Naruto with unnatural intelligence and growing interest. So that's what I've been sensing, it murmured in a distinctly feminine voice before disappearing into the shadows. A fox that isn't a fox. How deliciously intriguing. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Shadows of the Past. Moonlight filtered through the windows of the traditional Japanese inn, casting long shadows across tatami floors as Naruto sat cross-legged in perfect stillness. 3 days had passed since their hasty departure from Kuo Academy, and now, on the outskirts of Kyoto, he faced perhaps his most challenging task yet, reconnecting with the dormant fragment of Kurama within him. The journey had been complex. Akino's return to her maternal family's shrine had proven emotionally taxing, though she maintained composed dignity throughout the necessary rituals. Her family connections had earned them passage through the outer barriers of Kyoto's Yukai territory, but to reach the inner sanctum, where the dimensional tear fluctuated with increasing instability, required something more. The awakening of the Nine Tails energy is proof of Naruto's connection to Fox Yukai lineage. A deception, technically, but one with enough truth behind it to potentially work. Focus on the ember, as had advised before leaving him to his meditation. Don't force connection, invite resonance. Easier said than done. Since arriving in this world, Naruto had maintained awareness of Kurama's demeanor. Shed presence but avoided direct engagement, fearing complete loss of this last connection to his previous life. Now, necessity demanded confrontation. Breathing deeply, he descended into his Minska. Hey, the mental construct where he had once conversed with the Nine Tails. The familiar sewer-like corridors had transformed, reflecting his evolved relationship with the Biju. Instead of dank passages, he found himself in a tranquil forest clearing similar to where he and Kurama had fought side by side during the war. At its center, where the massive fox should have been, flickered a small flame of orange-red chakra, barely larger than a candle's light, yet undeniably alive. Kurama, Naruto called, approaching the ember with reverent care. I know you're still there, partner. I need your help. The flame flickered but gave no response. Naruto knelt beside it, remembering their journey from enemies to reluctant allies to true partners. How many battles had they faced together? How many possible odds overcome through their combined strength? Remember when we faced pain? He spoke to the flame. When we confronted Madara, when we joined against Kagaya, I never could have done any of it without you. The ember pulsed slightly, responding to the emotional resonance in his words. This world is different, Naruto continued. The energy here affected you more than me. But we're still connected, still partners. Extending his hand toward the flame required trust. The heat emanating from even this fragment felt dangerous, wild. But Naruto had never feared Kurama, even when perhaps he should have. I'm not asking you to give me power, he clarified. Just to show these Uchiha that we carry the same essence. That we belong here until we can find our way home. The ember curved violently before suddenly expanding, engulfing Naruto's mental projection in familiar burning chakra. Rather than pain, the sensation evoked nostalgia, the countless times Kurama's power had enveloped him. From the uncontrolled rages of his youth to the perfectly balanced harmony of their war-forged partnership. A voice, distant and fragmented, but unmistakably Kurama's growling bass, echoed through the mindscape. Kit, difficult. Maintain consciousness. Kurama. Naruto's joy at hearing the fox's voice nearly disrupted the tenuous connection. You're still here. Barely. The voice struggled. This world's energy, incompatible with Biju nature. But you're adapting. Naruto pressed hopefully. Slowly. Very slowly. The fox's presence seemed to stabilize slightly. Your chakra, sheltering mine, while adaptation occurs. Understanding dawned. Naruto's own chakra had been protecting Kurama's essence, explaining both the fox's dormancy and Naruto's diminished reserves. Can you manifest enough energy for me to access a portion of your power? Just temporarily, Naruto asked. We need to convince the Uchiha leadership to grant us access to the dimensional tear. The ember pulsed contemplatively. Possible, but risky. My chakra, unstable here, could harm you. I'll take that risk, Naruto said without hesitation. We need to get home. A sensation like a resigned sigh passed through the mindscape. Always rushing into danger. Some things never change. Despite the grave situation, Naruto grinned. Would you have me any other way? The simple admission carried unexpected warmth. We'll try. Temporary manifestation. Enough for verification of nature. Not combat. That's all I need, Naruto assured him. Thank you, partner. Prepare yourself. The ember expanded again, this time with deliberate control. This will hurt. In the physical world, Naruto's bow die suddenly tensed as orange-red chakra began seeping from his skin. Not the controlled golden energy of perfect Jinchuriki harmony, but the rawer, more primal power of Kurama's unfiltered essence. The sensation burned along his chakra pathways like molten metal, familiar yet changed by this world's different metaphysical laws. The shoji door slid open as Rias and Akino rushed in, alerted by the surge of unfamiliar energy. Naruto-kun, Rias exclaimed, stepping forward before halting at the sight before her. Naruto's appearance had altered dramatically, elongated canines, sharpened whisker marks, and eyes transformed from azure blue to slitted crimson. Most striking was the visible aura of orange-red energy forming the ghostly outline of a fox around his kneeling form. It's controlled. Naruto managed through gritted teeth, the strain of containing Kurama's unstable energy evident in his voice. Just adjusting to the manifestation. Akino's eyes widened with professional interest. The energy signature is incredible, similar to Yukai but fundamentally different. More primordial somehow. Can you maintain it long enough to meet with Yasaka? Rias asked practically, though concern colored her tone. Naruto nodded tightly. Kurama can't hold this long, but we can re-establish connection when needed. This should be enough to convince them of my heritage. The art of speaking disrupted his concentration, causing the chakra cloak to flicker dangerously. With careful control, Naruto gradually suppressed the manifestation, allowing Kurama's energy to recede back into dormancy. The process left him physically drained but mentally exhilarated. The fox was still with him, still fighting alongside him, even across dimensions. That was impressive, Rias obs. Irved once the transformation had fully subsided. And somewhat terrifying. Naruto managed a tired smile. Kurama has that effect on people. You speak of this entity as a separate consciousness, Akino noted perceptively. Not merely a power source. Because he is, Naruto confirmed, shifting to a more comfortable position as his body readjusted to normal chakra flow. The nine-tailed fox is a sentient being with his own personality, memories, and will. We share this body through a seal created by my father. The revelation clearly fascinated both devils, though they maintained respectful composure. In our world, such arrangements typically involve contracts of subservience, Rias observed. Yet you speak of partnership. It wasn't always that way, Naruto acknowledged, memories of earlier days surfacing. Our relationship evolved over time, from prisoner and jailer to reluctant allies to genuine partners. How does one befriend a being of such obvious destructive potential? Akino wondered aloud. Naruto considered the question seriously. By recognizing that power itself isn't good or evil, it's purpose and choice that matter. Kurama was filled with hatred because Mons had treated him as nothing but a weapon for centuries. Once I understood that, once I offered respect instead of control, everything changed. A contemplative silence followed this explanation. Both devils clearly drawing parallels to their own world's complex power dynamics. The meeting with Yasaka is scheduled for tomorrow morning, Rias finally said, returning to practical matters. With this demonstration, I believe we've secured at least an audience. The question remains whether she'll grant access to the tear. One step at a time, Naruto responded, wisdom born of experience evident in his tone. First impressions matter. We show respect for their territory and traditions, explain our situation honestly, and hope for understanding. Speaking of traditions, Akino interjected. Traditional baths have been prepared. After your energetic demonstration, you might appreciate the relaxation. The suggestion was perfectly timed. Naruto's muscles ached from the strain of channeling Kurama's unstable chakra. That sounds amazing. As the devils departed to allow him privacy, Naruto closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the dormant ember within. Thank you, he projected toward Kurama's presence. Rest now. I'll call if needed. A faint pulse of acknowledgement was the only response, but it sufficed. The partnership endured, even here, even diminished. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, at least, had delivered one vital victory. He was not truly alone in this world. Never had been. The Kyoto Imperial Palace appeared unchanged to human eyes. A historical landmark preserved for its cultural significance. To those with supernatural sight, however, the palace revealed its dual nature. Behind layers of powerful illusion magic existed the true seat of Yukai governance, where Fox, Tanuki, Tengu, and dozens of other spiritual species maintained a complex society parallel to human Japan. Naruto, flanked by Rias and Akino with Kaneko trailing slightly behind, followed their assigned guide through gardens that subtly shifted between human perception and supernatural reality. Cherry trees in ordinary bloom to human eyes revealed their true nature as ancient Sakura spirits to the visitors, their branches bowing respectfully as the group passed. The inner court maintains traditional protocols. Their guide, a young female kitsune with 3 visible tails, explained as they approached the main audience chamber. Address Lady Yusaka with appropriate honorifics, maintain respectful posture, and speak only when acknowledged. Understood. Rias confirmed with the practiced ease of nobility. We appreciate your accommodation of our unusual request for audience. The guide's expression remained professionally neutral, though her eyes lingered curiously on Naruto. Lady Yusaka has personal interest in beings of fox nature, she stated diplomatically. Particularly those not born of Kyoto lineage. The audience chamber itself reflected traditional Japanese imperial architecture elevated to supernatural magnificence. Columns of living wood supported a ceiling adorned with constellations that moved in real time. The floor, ngly simple tatami, revealed intricate protective arrays when viewed with chakra-enhanced perception. At the chamber's end, elevated on a modest dais, knelt a woman of extraordinary beauty. Her golden hair cascaded like sunlight, contrasting with elaborate traditional robes in imperial colors. Behind her, 9 magnificent golden tails spread in a regal display of power and station. Despite her delicate appearance, Naruto immediately recognized formidable strength, not unlike Tsunade's controlled power beneath graceful presentation. Approach, Yusaka commanded, her voice melodious yet carrying undeniable authority. The group advanced to the designated position before the dais, bowing with appropriate formality. Naruto, following Rias's earlier coaching, matched the devil's respectful post. While maintaining the straight-backed dignity expected of a visitor of significant standing. Rias Gremory, heir of House Gremory. Akano Himehime, daughter of Shuri of the Himehime clan. Kaneko Tuju of the Nekosho lineage. Yusaka acknowledged each with precise knowledge of their backgrounds before her golden eyes fixed on Naruto with undisguised interest. And Naruto Uzumaki, who claims connection to fox nature yet emanates energy unlike any yokai born of this world. The accuracy of her assessment impressed Naruto. Your perception is as remarkable as your reputation suggests, Lady Yusaka. A hint of amusement flickered across her regal features. Flattery from one who carries the essence of a 9-tailed entity yet is neither yokai nor devil. Fascinating. She leaned forward slightly. Demonstrate this essence. I would witness it directly. Naruto glanced briefly at Rias, who nodded encouragingly, before closing his eyes to concentrate. The connection with Kurama came more readily this time, as if their earlier interaction had established a clearer pathway. Orange-red chakra manifested around him, the ghostly fox outline more defined than during his practice session. Yusaka's tail swayed with evident interest as she studied the manifestation. Extraordinary. Not yokai chakra, yet similar in fundamental structure. More concentrated, primal. Her gaze intensified, and sentient. 2 consciousness within one form. With careful control, Naruto allowed the manifestation to recede, the strain significantly less than the previous attempt. Kurama, the 9 tails, and I coexist. In our world, he is one of 9-tailed beasts, living constructs of chakra created from a primordial entity. You speak truth, Yusaka declared after studying him silently for several moments. Your energy cannot be falsified. She shifted her attention to Rias. Now, daughter of Gremory, explain why a devil princess brings such a unique entity into the heart of yokai territory. Rias presented their situation with diplomatic precision. Naruto's dimensional displacement, the discovery of the tear, the time-sensitive nature of their request, and the historical precedent of travelers from the elemental nations finding sanctuary with Kyoto's Fox clan. Throughout the explanation, Yusaka remained impassive, though her tails occasionally twitched in response to particularly significant points. When Rias concluded, silence filled the chamber as the yokai leader considered the petition. The dimensional disturbance has not escaped our notice, she finally acknowledged. Our seers detected its formation 3 days ago within our most sacred precinct. That you identified it as a pathway to another realm confirms our own investigations. Hope flickered in Naruto's chest. Then you'll grant us access. Yusaka's expression remained carefully neutral. The matter is not so simple. The tear exists within the sacred grove, a location of tremendous spiritual significance. NCE connected to the founding of our faction. Access is restricted to those of direct Kyoto yokai lineage or those who have earned specific ceremonial privileges. Surely exceptions can be made given the circumstances. Rias suggested with careful deference. Exceptions to traditions maintained for thousands of years. Yusaka's tone cooled noticeably. That a devil would suggest such casual dismissal of our sacred protocols is precisely why relationships between our factions remain limited. The diplomatic temperature in the room dropped precipitously. Naruto, recognizing the dangerous shift, stepped forward slightly, a movement that immediately drew the attention of multiple guard kitsune. Lady Yusaka, he began, choosing his words with uncharacteristic care, in my world, I've seen the cost of rigid adherence to tradition when it conflicts with compassion. But I've also witnessed the wisdom in respecting foundations that have sustained societies for generations. The Yukai leader's expression remained neutral, though her tale stilled, a sign Naruto interpreted as attentive interest. I don't ask you to break your traditions, he continued. I ask if there exists, within those traditions, a path for someone like me, connected to fox nature but born outside your clan, to earn legitimate access to the sacred grove. The approach, acknowledging the value of tradition seeking legitimate accommodation within its framework rather than exception from it, visibly shifted Yusaka's demeanor. A thoughtful question, she acknowledged with subtle approval. Indeed, our traditions include provisions for those of fox nature born beyond our borders to prove their worthiness of sacred access. Traditionally through a ceremony of alignment demonstrating spiritual harmony with Inari's divine will. I would undertake such a ceremony, Naruto stated without hesitation. Yusaka studied him with renewed intensity. The ritual is not without risk. Your unusual nature, particularly the dual consciousness you harbor, could complicate the spiritual alignment. Failure could damage your chakra system permanently. Every worthwhile path carries risk, Naruto responded simply. Something shifted in Yusaka's golden eyes, recognition, perhaps, of kindred understanding despite their different origins. Very well. The ceremony requires preparation. You will remain within our territory as honored guests until arrangements are complete. Relief washed through the group, though Rias maintained composed dignity. We are grateful for your consideration, Lady Yusaka. The audience concluded with formal protocols, after which their guide escorted them to designated guest quarters within the Imperial Complex, a traditional pavilion overlooking meticulously maintained gardens. That was masterfully handled, Rias commented once they were alone. Your approach to Yusaka completely shifted the dynamic. Naruto shrugged modestly. I've dealt with traditional clan leaders before. The Hyuga in my village were similar, deeply committed to protocols while maintaining possible paths for necessary exceptions. You've shown remarkable diplomatic acumen for someone who describes himself primarily as a warrior. Akeno observed, serving tea with elegant precision. First with the Cetri arrangements, now with Yusaka. War taught me that fighting solves fewer problems than talking, Naruto replied simply. Though sometimes you need the former to create space for the latter. Kaneko, who had remained silent throughout the audience, suddenly spoke. She's powerful. The assessment carried professional respect rather than intimidation. Her control is impressive. Nine tails represents the pinnacle of kitsune development, Akeno explained. Each tail signifies mastery of additional spiritual domains. Yusaka is believed to be several centuries old. The mention of age prompted a question Naruto had been considering since arriving in this world. How long do devils live, actually? You all appear human, but devils age differently, Rias confirmed. Particularly pure-blooded nobles. My brother is over 500 years old but appears in his late 20s by human standards. This revelation, while intellectually interesting, carried unexpected emotional impact for Naruto. If he remained in this world, his human lifespan would be but a moment in the lives of these new companions, a sobering thought that reinforced the importance of returning home. A knock at their pavilion door interrupted further conversation. Their kitsune guide had returned, accompanied by an elderly fox Yukai whose 6 tails signified considerable rank and power. Uzumaki-san, the elder addressed Naruto directly. I am Toga, master of ceremonies. Lady Yusaka has ordered expedited preparation for your alignment ritual. I must assess your spiritual nature more thoroughly to properly configure the ceremonial elements. The directness was refreshing after the formal diplomatic dance of the audience chamber. Whatever you need, Naruto agreed readily. The process requires privacy and focus, Toga explained, glancing meaningfully at the devils. We'll explore the gardens, Rias decided smoothly. Recognizing the implicit request, Naruto-kun, we'll reconvene for dinner. As his companions departed, Naruto found himself alone with the ceremonial master, W. Ho's keen eyes studied him with clinical precision. Show me the fox entity again, Toga requested without preamble. Not just the external manifestation, but the connection point. Understanding the request, Naruto lifted his shirt, channeling a small amount of chakra to reveal the seal on his abdomen. The familiar spiraling design appeared, though noticeably fainter than it had been in his home world. Toga circled him slowly, occasionally making gestures that caused portions of the seal to glow in response. Fascinating construction, he murmured. Not Yukai methodology, yet achieving Milar symbiotic balance through entirely different metaphysical principles. It was designed by my father, Naruto explained. Modified by various events over time. The elder fox nodded absently. Attention focused on the seal's intricate components. The entity within, Kurama, you called it, is drastically diminished from its natural state. Yes, most of his chakra seems to have been affected by the dimensional transfer. Only a fragment remains active. Yet that fragment still possesses consciousness, Toga observed. Extraordinary resilience. He completed his circuit of examination before facing Naruto directly. The alignment ritual typically assumes a single consciousness directing Yukai energy. Your dual-natured state presents unique challenges. Can it be adapted? Naruto asked, concerned about another potential obstacle. To his surprise, Toga smiled, the first break in his professional demeanor. Of course, rituals are meant to serve spiritual purposes, not constrain them. We simply need to modify certain elements to accommodate both consciousness streams. His expression turned more serious. However, both you and the fox entity must achieve harmony during the ceremony. Any conflict between your wills would disrupt the alignment. That won't be a problem, Naruto assured him confidently. We've fought together against gods. We can handle a ritual. Toga's eyebrows rose slightly. Against gods. An interesting choice of words for one so young. He shook his head slightly. No matter. The preparations will be complete by tomorrow's moonrise. Until then, recommend meditation to strengthen your connection with your fox companion. The stronger your harmony, the smoother the alignment process. After providing specific meditation techniques particularly suited to fox energy manipulation, Toga departed, leaving Naruto to consider the coming ceremony. The elder's confident adaptability was encouraging, though the repeated warnings about risk suggested genuine danger. What do you think, Kurama? He asked internally, reaching for the fox's dormant presence. The response came slowly, the fox's consciousness surfacing with evident effort. Reminds me of the old priest who used to visit my mountain before Madara. The fragment of memory surprised Naruto. Kurama rarely shared recollections from his centuries of existence before Biko. Ming, a tailed beast imprisoned in human hosts. You lived on a mountain. Free. Long ago. The fox's presence seemed to strengthen slightly through the reminiscence. Humans feared me, but some understood, left offerings. Showed respect. Like these Yukai, Naruto realized. They understand living in harmony with powerful spirits. Similar, but different. Kurama's consciousness began fading again. Their power, fractured reflections, of what Biju once were. The insight was fascinating but cut short as Kurama's presence receded, the effort of maintaining consciousness clearly taxing in his diminished state. Naruto allowed the connection to fade naturally, reflecting on this glimpse into the fox's ancient past, a period before the cycle of Hatter D and imprisonment had twisted his nature. Perhaps this world, with its tradition of respecting powerful spirits rather than simply containing them, offered insights that could benefit the elemental nations upon their return. Cultural exchange rather than just dimensional retrieval. With this thought in mind, Naruto began the recommended meditation exercises, preparing both himself and Kurama for tomorrow's crucial ceremony. The sacred grove defied ordinary description. Located deep within the Imperial complex, beyond layers of protective barriers and illusion magic, the ancient woodla ND existed partially outside normal space-time, larger within than its external boundaries suggested, with qualities that shifted subtly depending on the observer's spiritual nature. To Naruto's chakra-sensitive perception, The grove appeared bathed in natural energy similar to the sage chakra he had mastered, though with distinctive variations unique to this world. Ancient trees towered impossibly high, their branches forming a canopy that filtered moonlight into patterns resembling flowing script across the forest floor. At the grove's center, visible now as they followed Toga along a path that seemed to create itself with each step, stood a circular clearing dominated by a massive stone altar. The altar's surface bore intricate carvings that reminded Naruto of Fuinjutsu designs, though operating on principles he didn't recognize. Most striking, however, was the dimensional tear itself, a vertical fissure in reality approximately 2 meters tall, fluctuating between visibility and translucence-like heat shimmer above desert sand. Through focused perception, Naruto could sense familiar energy emanating from within, chakra from his home world, structured according to principles his body recognized on an instinctual level. Home, he whispered, momentarily overcome by the tangible connection to the elemental nations. Yusaka awaited them beside the altar, her ceremonial attire even more elaborate than during their audience, 9 tails fanned majestically behind her. Surrounding the clearing at respectful distance stood several kitsune elders, maintaining a barrier that contained the tear's unstable energy. The pathway continues to deteriorate, Yusaka informed them without preamble. Our efforts have slowed the collapse, but cannot prevent it. If the alignment succeeds, you will have approximately 12 hours to utilize the connection before it fails completely. The timeline was tighter than they had hoped, but still workable given the 3-day preparation period Sasuke had mentioned. If Naruto could establish sufficient stability from this side, his teammates should be able to complete their extraction method before the tear collapsed. I'm ready, he stated, determination evident in his posture. Toga approached with a ceremonial bowl containing luminescent liquid. The essence of alignment, he explained, derived from the spiritual energy of 9 generations of Kyoto Guardians. It will temporarily attune your chakra to the resonant frequency of our sacred spaces. Naruto accepted the bowl with appropriate reverence, drinking the shimmering liquid in a single draught as tradition required. The effect was immediate and intense, warmth spreading through his chakra network, followed by a tingling sensation as his energy began resonating with the grove's ambient power. Now, Yusaka instructed, approach the altar and establish physical connection. Your companions will remain at the boundary as witnesses, but cannot interfere once the ceremony begins. Naruto glanced back at Rias, Akeno, and Kaneko, who had been permitted to observe from the grove's edge. Rias offered an encouraging nod, her expression conveying confidence in his ability to succeed. The stone altar felt unexpectedly warm beneath his palms as Naruto took position. Within his mindscape, Kurama's presence stirred in response to the grove's fox-aligned energy, the M.R. of his consciousness flaring brighter than at any point since their arrival. This place, the fox's voice came with surprising clarity, reminds me of the sage's sanctuary. Yusaka circled the altar, 9 tails weaving complex patterns that manipulated the grove's ambient energy. The ritual begins, she announced formally. Let the supplicant's nature be revealed, judged, and aligned according to ancient covenant. Power surged through the altar into Naruto's chakra network, not invasively but resonantly, like a tuning fork adjusting a similar instrument to perfect pitch. His consciousness expanded beyond normal parameters, perceiving the grove's true spiritual nature while simultaneously diving deeper into his own. Within his mindscape, the forest clearing had transformed, growing, expanding, becoming more vibrant. Kurama's ember had evolved into a proper flame, taking on a more defined vulpine shape though still far smaller than his true form. Kit, this energy, it's stabilizing my chakra, the fox observed with evident surprise. Temporarily at least. Can you maintain stronger manifestation during the ceremony? Naruto asked, sensing this would be crucial for the alignment. Yes, but be careful. This ritual, seeking to categorize us, within this world's spiritual framework. We must remain ourselves. The warning resonated with Naruto's own instincts. The ceremony's purpose was alignment, not transformation, finding harmony with this world's fox spirits without becoming one of them. In the physical realm, orange-red chakra began emanating from Naruto's body, interacting with the golden energy Yusaka continuously channeled through the altar. Where the energies met, complex patterns formed in the air, spiritual Taions seeking balance between fundamentally different yet surprisingly compatible systems. Interesting, Yusaka observed, her ceremonial formality briefly giving way to scholarly fascination. Your Fox entity's chakra possesses elements unknown to our oldest records, yet resonates with our foundational energy. Not descendant, not ascendant, but parallel. The observation matched what Kurama had suggested. The yukai as fractured reflections of what Biju had once been, perhaps evolutionary cousins across dimensional boundaries rather than direct relations. The alignment seeks balance, Toga explained from his position maintaining the ceremonial boundaries. Allow your dual natures to find their proper correspondence within our spiritual taxonomy without forcing categorization. Yuto understood intuitively what was required, not fighting the ceremonial energy, not surrendering to it, but dancing with it. Finding harmony without losing identity. He had performed similar balancing acts when mastering Sage Mode, maintaining his human consciousness while channeling nature's raw power. Within his mindscape, he approached Kurama's flame form. Together, the fox's ember eyes gleamed with familiar determination. Together, their synchronized acceptance created a perfect moment of harmony that the ceremonial energy immediately recognized. The competing patterns of chakra suddenly aligned, orange, red and golden energies weaving together in complex helixes before settling into stable resonance. Alignment achieved, Yusaka announced with evident satisfaction. Not as Kyoto Kitsune, but as honored kin in spirit. Access to the sacred grove is granted according to ancient covenant. The ceremonial energies receded gradually, leaving Naruto's chakra tingling with new awareness. Though unchanged in fundamental nature, his energy now resonated harmoniously with the grove's spiritual frequency, recognized, if not quite native. Most surprising was Kurama's continued clarity within his mindscape. The fox's consciousness more fully present than at any point since their dimensional displacement. The ritual has temporarily stabilized my chakra within this world's metaphysical framework. Kurama explained, sounding more like his old self. I cannot manifest my full power, but my consciousness is no longer slipping away. This unexpected benefit brought Naruto profound relief. Having Kurama's presence, his counsel and companionship, made the challenges ahead significantly more manageable. Yusaka approached as the ceremonial formations dissipated, our regal bearing softened by professional satisfaction. Few outsiders have achieved such clean alignment, particularly on first attempt. Your harmony with your fox companion is impressive. We've had lots of practice. Naruto replied with a tired smile, the ritual having consumed considerable chakra despite its successful outcome. The tear is now accessible to you, she continued, gesturing toward the dimensional fissure. Our barrier maintainers will withdraw to the grove's perimeter, providing you space to work while continuing basic containment. As the Kitsune elders repositioned themselves, Rias, Akeno, and Kaneko were permitted to approach the central altar. Their expressions reflected mixed awe and concern. The ceremony had evidently been more visually dramatic than Naruto had realized from within its energetic flow. Are you all right? Rias asked, her composed demeanor slipping to reveal genuine worry. The energies were intense. I'm fine, Naruto assured her. Better than fine, actually. Kurama's more stable now. We can communicate more clearly. The Nine Tails is more active. Akeno asked with professional interest. Has his power returned as well? Tell Thunder Girl that my power remains limited. Kurama grumbled within Naruto's mind, but my awareness has improved substantially. Naruto relayed the message, prompting raised eyebrows from Ino at being so specifically addressed by the entity within him. Thunder Girl, she repeated with amused curiosity. He can perceive our natures. I may be diminished, but I'm not blind, Kurama retorted. She carries thunder affinity like the Ni woman did. He's comparing you to another Jinchuriki from our world, Naruto explained. Yugito Ni, who contained the two tails. She also had lightning affinity. This comparison clearly intrigued Akeno, though further discussion was postponed as Yusaka directed their attention to more pressing matters. You must establish connection through the tear while it remains sufficiently stable, she advised. Our seers estimate approximately 8 hours before degradation reaches critical levels, despite our containment efforts. Naruto nodded, approaching the dimensional fissure with focused intent. Up close, The tear radiated familiar energy that called to his chakra like a beacon, the metaphysical signature of his home world, distinctive and unmistakable now that he had experienced the contrast. Can you sense anything from the other side? Rias asked, studying the phenomenon with scholarly interest. Closing his eyes, Naruto extended his sensory perception into the fissure, searching for the specific chakra signatures of his teammates. The experience was similar to their previous connection attempt but more focused and directional, with the tear providing a stable channel. Yes, he confirmed after several moments of concentration. Faint, but present. They're maintaining an anchor point on their side, some kind of Ealing array focusing their chakra toward this location. Can you establish communication? Akino inquired practically. With Kurama's help, I think so. Naruto formed a familiar hand seal, focusing his restored connection with the fox. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A single shadow clone materialized beside him. Not his usual combat-ready duplicate but a specialized variant modified through their years of experimentation. This clone's chakra network was configured specifically for sensory transmission, sacrificing physical durability for enhanced perception. Sensory relay, Naruto explained to his companions. The clone will maintain contact with the tear while I coordinate with you. The clone nodded, assuming a meditative position directly before the fissure. Its eyes closed in concentration as Naruto fed it a steady stream of chakra, establishing the connection without risking his own consciousness being pulled through prematurely. Contact established, the clone reported after several tense minutes. They sense us. Chakra signatures confirmed. Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi-sensei. Others present too. Tsunade Bachin, Shizune, Hinata, Shikamaru. Relief washed through Naruto at confirmation of his friend's safety. Though he maintained professional focus on their mission. Can you convey information? The clone's brow furrowed in concentration. Limited. More like impressions than words. They understand we've reached the tier from this side. They're nearly ready. The extraction technique requires precise timing and synchronized chakra output from both dimensions. Do they have an estimated time frame? Rias asked practically. After another moment of intense concentration, the clone relayed, approximately 6 hours from now. Their preparations are nearly complete but require final calibration based on the tear's energy signature, which they're analyzing through our connection. The timeline was tight but workable, 6 hours for their preparation, leaving hours before the tear's critical degradation according to Yusaka's estimate. Minimal margin for error, but sufficient if everything proceeded optimally. We should establish a rotation schedule, Akino suggested pragmatically. Maintaining the connection will drain chakra continuously. Naruto-kun will need recovery periods to ensure maximum energy for the actual extraction. I can help with that. Kurama interjected within Naruto's mind. My consciousness is stabilized enough to maintain basic connection independently for short periods, allowing you to rest. Naruto relayed this offer, which prompted thoughtful consideration from the group. A wise approach, Yusaka agreed, having observed their planning with interest. I will assign 2 of our barrier specialists to augment your rotation. Their energy manipulation skills can temporarily reinforce the tear's stability during critical junctures. With these arrangements in place, they established a systematic schedule, Naruto maintaining primary connection for 1-hour intervals, alternating with Kurama's independent maintenance during 30-minute recovery periods. Rias and Akino would provide supplemental energy through carefully calibrated transfers, while the Kitsune specialists reinforced the tear's structural integrity at regular intervals. As the first rotation began, Naruto found himself experiencing an unexpected emotional complexity. The imminent prospect of returning home filled him with joy and anticipation, yet looking at the companions who had so quickly become important in his life, he felt genuine regret at the impending separation. Rias seemed to sense his conflicted feelings, approaching while Akino discussed technical details with the Kitsune specialists. Having second thoughts, she asked quietly, no judgment in her tone. Not about going home, Naruto clarified immediately. But, I'll miss all of you. It's strange how quickly connections form, isn't it? Her expression softened with understanding. Not strange at all. Bonds forged through shared challenges often prove deeper than those developed over leisurely acquaintance. In my world, we call it the will of fire, Naruto explained. The concept feeling particularly relevant. The belief that connections between people transcend circumstance, that we're strongest when protecting those we care about. A beautiful philosophy, Rias observed thoughtfully, not unlike certain aspects of devil culture, though we tend to formalize such bonds through peerage relationships. Their conversation paused as Naruto's Lone reported increased activity from the other side, Sasuke apparently adjusting their ceiling array to better align with the tear's fluctuating properties. They're making good progress, Naruto noted with relief. Faster than expected. Then we should ensure you're properly rested for the final extraction, Rias decided practically. Allow Kurama to maintain the next connection phase while you recover. Though reluctant to step away from active participation, Naruto recognized the wisdom in her suggestion. With a brief internal consultation with Kurama, who assured him the connection LD be maintained independently for at least 30 minutes, he agreed to a short rest period. As they moved to a quieter section of the grove, Rias observed, your relationship with the fox entity is fascinating. True symbiosis rather than dominance or subjugation. It took us a long time to reach this point, Naruto acknowledged. For years, we were adversaries more than partners. The change began when I stopped seeing Kurama as a weapon or burden and started recognizing him as a person with his own history and pain. Recognizing the personhood of beings different from ourselves, Rias mused. A simple concept in theory, yet so rarely practiced, even among supernatural societies. The insight revealed a depth of philosophical thinking that Naruto found increasingly appealing in the devil heiress. Beneath her responsibilities and power lay a thoughtful mind that questioned established assumptions. In your world, she continued after a contemplative pause, what awaits your return? What life were you building before displacement? The question struck deeper than perhaps intended, touching on uncertainties Naruto had carried even before his dimensional transfer. I was being groomed for leadership, he answered honestly. Hokage, the leader of my village. It's been my dream since childhood, but the reality of the position became more complex after the war. The burden of leadership often contradicts its romantic image, Rias observed with evident personal understanding. The responsibility for others' lives and futures weighs heavily. Exactly, Naruto confirmed, surprised by how precisely she had articulated his unspoken concern. As a child, I wanted recognition. As an adult, I understand that leadership means making impossible choices while others look to you for certainty you don't always feel. Rias's expression revealed profound recognition, not sympathy but genuine comprehension born of parallel experience. The expectation to uphold legacy while forging your own path. To respect tradition while implementing necessary change. To project confidence even when uncertain. You understand perfectly, Naruto realized, studying her with new appreciation. Of course, her smile held a hint of rueful acknowledgement. As heir to Rias Gremory, I've balanced similar contradictions my entire life. The weight of centuries of noble tradition against my own vision for the future. The expectation of perfect composure regardless of inner turmoil. This unexpected common ground, the shared experience of leadership expectations and legacy pressures, created a moment of genuine connection that transcended their different origins and species. Do you ever doubt, Naruto asked quietly, whether you're ready for the responsibility others expect you to bear? Constantly, she admitted with surprising candor. But I've learned that doubt itself isn't weakness, refusing to acknowledge it is. The best leaders question themselves privately while projecting necessary confidence publicly. The wisdom in her perspective resonated deeply with Naruto's own evolving understanding of leadership, not as perfect certainty but as thoughtful commitment despite inevitable uncertainty. Their conversation continued along these lines, discussing the nature of effective leadership, the balance between strength and compassion, the challenge of making decisions that affected others' lives. Throughout, Naruto found himself increasingly drawn to Rias's combination of intelligence, compassion, and pragmatic wisdom, qualities that reminded him of the best leaders he had known in his world while remaining distinctively her own. By the time Akeno approached to notify them that Kurama had reached his sustainable limit for independent connection, Naruto felt both intellectually stimulated and emotionally centered, their conversation having provided valuable perspective on his own leadership journey while deepening his appreciation for Rias's complex character. Your fox companion is quite the conversationalist, Akino commented with amused interest as they returned to the central altar. He shared several colorful opinions about various beings from your world. I merely provided context, Kurama defended within Naruto's mind. The Thunder Girl asked about Jinchuriki history. I gave accurate information. I'm sure you were perfectly diplomatic, Naruto replied dryly, prompting a huffing sound from the fox. The next several hours passed in focused activity as the connection with the elemental nations strengthened. Naruto's clone rapport. Ted increasingly detailed information flowing through the tear, technical specifications for the extraction technique, chakra synchronization requirements, and eventually, personal messages from his friends. Sasuke's typical terseness. Don't mess this up, Dobi. Sakura's medical precision. Maintain stable chakra output during extraction to prevent pathway damage. Kakashi's deceptively casual assurance. We've got this. Just be ready to jump when we create the opening. Each message, however brief, carried emotional weight that both strengthened Naruto's resolve and heightened his awareness of how much he had missed his precious people. As the projected extraction time approached, tension mounted within the sacred grove. The Kitsune barrier specialists reported increasing instability in the tear's structure despite their reinforcement efforts, while Naruto's clone detected growing chakra concentration on the other side, his teammates gathering their combined power for the final technique. 1 hour until projected extraction, Rias announced, coordinating their side of the operation with admirable efficiency. Final preparations should commence. For Naruto, these preparations were primarily internal, ensuring his chakra pathways were clear, his energy reserves maximized, and his synchronization with Kurama optimized. The Fox had agreed to provide a controlled surge of high-stabilized energy at the critical moment, giving Naruto the necessary boost to traverse the dimensional barrier without disrupting it. Like breaking through Obito's dimensional barriers, Kurama compared. But with more precision and less brute force. That was mostly you providing the brute force, Naruto reminded him with affectionate teasing. And I'll provide the precision this time, the Fox countered. Just don't hesitate when the moment comes. Dimensional traversal requires absolute commitment. As final adjustments continued, Yasaka approached Naruto with formal dignity. As the hour of your departure approaches, I wish to convey the respect of the Kyoto faction for your conduct during your brief time in our world. I appreciate your accommodation of our unusual circumstances. Naruto replied sincerely. Without your willingness to adapt tradition to necessity, this opportunity would have been lost. Tradition exists to serve life, not constrain it, Yasaka observed with quiet wisdom. A principle sometimes forgotten even among the long-lived. She studied him thoughtfully before adding, your departure will leave certain, unresolved questions among our scholars. The nature of Biju compared to Yukai. The parallel evolution of fox spirits across dimensions. Perhaps someday those questions will find answers, Naruto suggested. Now that a connection has been established, however briefly, knowledge that other worlds exist remains. The philosophical exchange was interrupted as Naruto's clone suddenly stiffened, eyes widening. Activity spiking on the other side. They're initiating the extraction sequence earlier than projected. Alarm spread through the gathered specialists. The tear's degradation has accelerated, one Kitsune reported urgently. Structural integrity at 37% and declining rapidly. They must have detected the same deterioration from their side, Rias reasoned quickly. They're acting before the opportunity is lost completely. Naruto immediately moved to position directly before the dimensional fissure, his clone dissolving to transfer its gathered intelligence. They're using a modified version of the Flying Thunder God technique, he reported, recognizing the chakra signature of his father's famous jutsu. Creating a momentary stable pathway through Sasuke's Rinnegan amplification. How long will the pathway remain viable? Akino asked, helping to adjust the barrier containment to accommodate the unexpected acceleration. Seconds at most, Naruto estimated grimly. One-way transit, no margin for error. The reality of the situation crystallized with sudden clarity. This was happening now, ready or not. His time in this world was ending, these new connections about to be severed as abruptly as they had formed. Looking at the companions who had become so important in such a short time, Naruto felt words inadequate yet necessary. I can't properly thank you. No time for goodbyes. Rias interrupted with practical urgency, though her eyes conveyed deeper emotion. Focus on successful transit. That's how you honor our efforts. She was right, of course. Sentiment could wait. Survival required complete attention. Nodding with grateful understanding, Naruto turned back to the tear, which had begun glowing with increasing intensity as chakra from the other side poured through in structured formation. Transit window opening in approximately 20 seconds, he announced, feeling the distinctive energy signature of Sasuke's Rinnegan combining with what he recognized as Kak. Ashi's space-time manipulation and Sakura's precise chakra control. We've stabilized the grove's side as much as possible, Yusaka reported, her nine tails channeling continuous energy into the containment barrier. But hurry, our capacity to maintain integrity diminishes by the moment. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, centering himself for what would come next. Within his mindscape, Kurama's presence flared with determined support. Ready when you are, Kit. Let's go home. The tear suddenly expanded, its fluctuating edges stabilizing into a defined oval portal through which indistinct figures could briefly be glimpsed, familiar chakra signatures calling to Naruto like beacons. Now, he called, channeling chakra to his feet for the precise leap that would carry him through dimensions. In that final moment, something unexpected occurred. As he gathered himself for transit, Naruto felt a sudden pressure against his back, a deliberate push that disrupted his carefully calibrated movement. Sorry, a feminine voice purred in his ear, but I can't let such an interesting fox leave without me. Before he could process the interruption, Naruto found himself propelled through the dimensional opening. The unknown assailant apparently following directly behind. The sensation of dimensional transit overwhelmed all other awareness, a disorienting rush of competing realities essing into a single point of transition. The last thing Naruto registered from the DxD world was Rias's alarmed cry, not for herself, but warning him of danger. Then reality compressed, expanded, and reconfigured around him as the extraction technique completed its function. When consciousness returned moments later, Naruto found himself sprawled on familiar ground, the distinctive stone of a hidden leaf ceiling chamber surrounding him. Concerned faces hovered above, Sasuke's intense scrutiny, Sakura's medical assessment, Kakashi's careful vigilance. It worked, Sakura exclaimed with relieved triumph. Vital signs stable, chakra network intact. Not just him, Sasuke noted tersely, Rinnegan activated as he stared at something beyond Naruto's current field of vision. Something else came through. With effort, Naruto turned his head to confirm what instinct already told him, he had not returned alone. Lying unconscious several feet away was a slender female figure with distinctive black hair. Not Rias or Akino as he might have expected in a rescue attempt, but someone he'd never seen before, a woman in traditional Japanese attire with two black cat ears protruding from her head. And two tails visible beneath her prone form. A nekosho, he identified weakly, recognizing the Yukai subspecies from Kaniko's reluctant explanations. But not one I know. As if triggered by his voice, the mysterious stowaway stirred. Golden eyes opening with feline alertness despite her dimensional transit. Her gaze fixed on Naruto with unmistakable satisfaction as a smile curved her lips. Hello, interesting fox boy. She greeted with playful composure entirely inappropriate for the situation. I'm Kuroka, and I believe you'll find me a most fascinating traveling companion. The seal-ing chamber erupted into controlled chaos. Anbu materializing from concealed positions, sensors establishing containment protocols, medical ninja approaching with cautious assessment jutsu. As Sasuke and Kakashi moved to secure the unexpected visitor, Naruto processed the implications of this development. He had returned home successfully, mission accomplished. Yet he'd also inadvertently brought an unknown supernatural entity from another dimension into the heart of Konoha. Somewhere in the sacred grove of Kyoto, he imagined Rias pinching the bridge of her nose in exasperation at this complication neither of them had anticipated. Some things, it seemed, remained consistent across dimensions. No plan involving Naruto Uzumaki ever proceeded exactly as expected. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.